My dear friends, thinkers, and gamers, welcome back to Tales of Praxis for a fine Friday evening stream. I'm your host, Aaron Suduko, the founder of With a Terrible Fate, your first and final source for all literary studies of video games. If you don't quite know what that means, good news, you've come at the right time because we have something brand new that pertains directly to this series for you to see what that means firsthand. I'm a philosopher of video game storytelling. WithTheTerribleFate.com is a publication that I've been running for almost a decade at this point, if you can believe it. I certainly can't. We're going to have our big decade anniversary in November, so I'm sure there'll be something planned for that. TBD. We'll see how that goes. But if you love the stories of games and sink your teeth into them the way others do into novels, films, theatrical pieces, you've found your home of like-minded gamers. We publish all sorts of studies and celebrations of these masterpieces, from long-form written content of the kind I just shared with you, to podcasts, to convention lectures at venues such as PAX. And a fun thing I'll share with the stream, I think before anyone else, we did just get made aware a couple days ago that PAX East in Boston wants us to come and talk about bosses, which should be a very fun topic. Hey Grail, hey Pottery, a pleasure to see you both. It's a topic that I'm going to be discussing with my dear friend and colleague Matt McGill, because Dan Hughes is going to be unavailable. But if you're a regular to the stream, you know you've seen Matt on here a few times. He's a dear friend of mine and incredibly incisive when it comes to games. So we're going to spend probably the next week fleshing out exactly how we dig into the topic. But the general thought is something that is very germane to the kinds of things that we talk about on the stream here. This idea that bosses and villains in games are this interesting kind of hybrid of really challenging pieces of gameplay and really probative characters that illuminate key themes and points in the storytelling. And sometimes those two functions can complement each other. Sometimes they can pull apart. In many games, especially those that are concerned with difficulty and challenge, like Miyazaki's games or those he's inspired, you can palpably feel the friction between those two elements. So it's going to be a lecture in March. I don't think that PAX is streaming it, but we'll certainly record it and publish it like we did the talk in Seattle last year, celebrating and looking into bosses. And I'm already scheming to find a way to get JRPGs into the mix. Maybe, probably Tales games, maybe something else. We'll see how it goes. Boston, yes, it's calling. The final Boston, you might even say. I know that's a great example, Grail, and you could throw a rock at a Tales game and hit a million bosses. That would be great to study in exactly this way. So chances are good I will find a tie-in to this Tales of Praxis series for that lecture. That's my segue back for those of you who might not be familiar, like Grail and Pottery are, to this Tales of Praxis adventure we're on. It's an adventure I've been on for almost a year at this point. I think the anniversary will in fact be in March, right around when PAX East is in Boston. The Tales series of JRPGs by first Namco, now Bandai Namco, really shaped me as a person and a thinker and a gamer growing up. Tales of Symphonia was my first video game story, which really inspired me to get into the medium, which is something that defines and sculpts my life to this day. So when Symphonia was remastered last year, I decided it's high past time that I dig into these games from an analytical and philosophical lens and ask the question of, as a whole, what questions is this series concerned with addressing? What themes does it want its players to wrestle with? And how does it construct an entire language in its storytelling to encourage us to think about these concepts in new ways? So we've been doing that in two forms. One has been these wonderful live streamed book club adventures we've been on. We're just wrapping up our fifth, if you can believe it. In some ways, it feels like we should be further along. In some ways, it feels just right, given the length of these games and the quality of time we spend with each of them. But we've been through Symphonia, Dawn of the New World, Systeria, Berseria, and now we're wrapping up Tales of Grace's F at long last after over 100 hours. And we will then be turning our attention maybe next week we'll see how this post game goes, but certainly soon to another duology amongst the games, Tales of Exilia 1 and 2. I'm so excited. It's going to be my first time working my way through those games. I tried to pick up Tales of Exilia more than once at inopportune times in my life and did not get past the first few hours. So you'll see Aaron being very familiar with the very first motions without a net. Not dissimilar to what we did with Dawn of the New World, or indeed with the fourth act, Lineage and Legacies of Tales of Grace's F, which was also new for me. Oh, well, there you go. Grail suspects that this post game might keep us busy for a bit, so we'll see. I will say, Grail, and I'm bouncing around a little bit, but I wanted to do a little bit of my homework for your benefit. So I know you were advocating getting Asbel to at least level 80 and getting that title to help us out. So I did go back. I got the couple chests and discovery points that we had missed in the shaft on the way to Fodra's core, and did get not all of the party, but most of the party, including Asbel, up to and past level 80. So hopefully things will be a little more breathable for us, which will be fun. Oh, Pottery, don't put that evil on us. I had put those things out of my mind. I must have done at least a little bit of the post game, because I think I've mentioned this on the stream before, but I do have vivid acid flashbacks of late night gaming sessions struggling with those as a kid. So I didn't do the fourth act, but I definitely remember some of the struggles that we have coming up. So keep that in mind. And then, as Pottery was saying last time, juxtapose it against or smash cut it with Aaron saying over the credits that this is an example of a perfect game, and take that as you will. But I'll be an apologist for it no matter how hard it is. The other horn of the Tales of Praxis series, if you're interested in diving more granularly into the substance of these games and their storytelling and their contributions to the nature of the video game philosophical experience, is the series of long-form written articles that I've published on With a Terrible Fate about, I think, 7 of the games at this point, if you can believe it, which again, part of me sometimes feels like I'm ahead of the curve on that. Part of me feels like I have some catching up to do. I've certainly played a healthier number than that so far in my Tales of Praxis review, because the goal is to ultimately play through all the Tales games, those I played as a kid and also those which I missed, and analyze and publish on all of them. But oh my goodness, it takes so much to really put the effort into the study and analysis of these games that I feel they are due, that it really is a little bit like giving birth each time one of these is breathed into the world. So I always appreciate sharing it with the community, always appreciate chatting about it with you fine folks. And that article that I already pumped into the chat once is the latest contribution to that. Only a few days old at this point, although I know these diehards in the stream chat have already read it chapter and verse, and we've talked about it and had a good time with it. But if you love this series, if you love making sense of your core childhood experiences with it, if you love analyzing the series over time, longitudinally, this new article has something for you, no matter which of those camps you fall into, because it's looking at Chester, one of the characters from the very first founding game in the series, Tales of Fantasia, but also using him as a symbolic means to interpret what the stories of a range of the games are trying to say, the games that are commonly referred to as the Azalea games in reference to the world of Tales of Fantasia. So check that out if you find it valuable, if it puts new ideas in your head about things that you want to think about in the series or other analyses that you'd like to see me do as part of Tales of Praxis. Let me know. The conversations are what JRPGs are all about, life is all about, and indeed these articles are all about. So don't be shy. I am highly reachable. I have heard that also, Pottery, about Godzilla -1. So I'm going to have to see it at some point. I'm very much not a Godzilla head in the way I'm a Tales head or something like that. But I'll tell you, one of the fun, just throwaway conversations that Dan and I had while we were adventuring through Japan was talking about the history of Godzilla and its relationship with Japanese culture and national identity, because I guess, unsurprisingly, there are a lot of tie-ins and interesting conversations that happen around that in the series. But I've never seen one, so I didn't really know anything about that. But I guess, especially in light of the background of the nation and the background of the series of movies that had come before, I guess a lot of really interesting stuff happens in that new movie. So it's definitely on my list. Yeah, so yes, Grail, I do think we definitely still have some things to do that'll keep us busy, so it'll be good. Like I said, I'll leave it to you to put together a game plan in terms of what order you think it'll be good for us to do things in. Um, my non Tales update for the evening, because I know Pottery is going to ask if I don't mention, is you definitely got me past the event horizon, Pottery, of getting sunk way too deep into Inscription for my own good. So I think now that I'm further in and I roughly have a sense of the act structure, and you alluded to the act structure last time, I'll say I think, roughly speaking, as best as I can tell, I'm in the middle of the third act. My mind is continuing to melt. I continue to be blown away by the ways in which the world expands on itself. Actually, funny because it's obviously a very different genre than something like a Tales game, but it kind of puts me in mind of the first thing I published on Tales of Symphonia, talking about my experience as a kid watching the world expand before I had any model in my mind of the way in which JRPG narratives and worlds typically evolve. I kind of felt a little bit of that magic, albeit with a much more mind bending flavor to it in Inscription. Yeah, I feel you feeling me. It's definitely that kind of game. I will say, with minimal spoilers now, because again, I want to be careful with this game for people like myself who have not played it and would get a lot out of it. The thing that is most on my mind, and I'll be excited to think about and chat about after I'm done, is just paying attention to the ways in which it is similar to and different from, let's say, related titles that have come out in the few years, because I think it follows in the footsteps of a few pretty well-known games that are mind-bending in similar ways. And so definitely the further I'm getting into the world and the more I'm getting to know the characters, I find myself asking, okay, what's Inscription going to do that uniquely puts its mark on this mode of storytelling and gaming, and why is that going to be interesting? Because I have some hints and hunches about where it's going and why that is importantly fun and different than a lot of what has come before it. Maybe fun is the wrong word, but interesting and worthwhile, let's put it that way. So I'm dialed in, and you know you're going to get my updates. I guess it's not a spoiler. Undertale is the one that I'm thinking of most of all, because the further I get into Inscription, it feels like some of the turns and challenges to the form, and even some of the character beats that I remember from Undertale. But again, like I said, that's nested within a lot of context that feels like it's serving a different purpose and trying to talk about something that's a little different than what Undertale cares about, which is part of what has it makes it really interesting for me, especially because I feel like what Inscription is bending towards is slightly different and more my speed than what Undertale was. Yeah, and we can chat more about it offline too, because I have a few particular things in mind that I'm sure you would pick up what I'm putting down if we talked about it. Um, okay, Grail, your copy of Grand Blue Relink came yesterday. Fantastic, and you are already on the last chapter, final dungeon. That does not surprise me about you. That's like that reminds me of the energy I had when Final Fantasy 16 came out, where I was like, yeah, okay, I'm 3 days in, almost done. It's fine, I guess. It's good to have that energy about games, no doubt about that. Well, if you have any further reviews or thoughts on it, you know I'm always excited for that. And this weekend, Grail, I'm excited to finally treat myself to some of your writing as a little reward after my own publication. So expect my thoughts on that too. That's going to be a lot of fun to chat about. I promised the stream, I think, exactly one more day of show and tell for my Japan adventures. So for those who don't know, we took a break at the beginning of the year from the stream because with my friend and colleague Dan Hughes, I went to Japan actually for his bachelor party because he's getting married in just a few weeks, insanely. I'm his best man who still needs to put together a wedding toast, so that'll probably be my next writing project. But got a lot of good cultural and pop cultural tie-ins to everything we do when we talk about and think about video games. So I've been sharing some of the output of that with the stream, and I think we have one very Tales-centric show and tell left, and then we'll be pretty much signed, sealed, and ready to move on to other stuff. Um, I think there is a way to answer that question, Pottery. I have beaten the first two bosses on the right hand side of the map as you're looking at it as a player, if that tracks for you. I imagine it will. and I am at the start of Act Two. I chose the path of oh, what's a good way to say this? If this is what you're asking about, following the person who had been the main figure in the game so far. Although I subsequently changed my mind by the end of the second act. Does that? I think that tracks. I think that I'm getting better at talking about spoilers without spoiling anything. Although Inscription is really testing my muscles in that capacity. Yeah, that tracks. There we go. Feel free to ask me more spoilery, non-spoilery questions, and we can talk in this coded language. It's actually kind of fun. A good lateral exercise for the brain. All right, friends. Last show and tell. A couple non-Talesy things, and then we'll end with some very Talesy stuff. I hadn't thought to show this to you, but one thing that you might not know about Japan, if you've never gone, is that while they nowadays do accept a lot more of credit cards, contactless payment, things like that, following the era of COVID, they've always been a very cash-forward society, cash first, and still a lot of the commerce is done in vending machines and a lot of the places that you find around, like the gacha machines we were talking about, on a coin basis. And so while in the States, I truly can't remember the last time I had need for any coins, you're always carrying around a bunch of different denominations of coin in Japan, which means you have a great excuse to get a fun little coin purse like this one, which of course evokes the Shiba Inu dog carrying around a little purse of its own. So had to do justice to my small furry one who, I think I can move the camera. She's hanging out, having a grand old time. Over there, my Rapide. She's grouchy because I told her I was talking about an archer in this latest article as opposed to a dog, and she doesn't understand why I would ever include anything in my my philosophical studies other than dogs and homages to her. But got many homages to her in Japan, including also, to go with the coins, this very fun thing that I found in the Pokemon Center. It's I didn't have time to get it set up for you, but it's an Eevee themed piggy bank where you can press a button on it and Eevee will pop out of the bank and the little paw will grab the coin and drag it into the bank. So the cutest little Pokemon thing and the cutest little further homage to Eevee, because I'm obsessed with my dog and can't get enough of anything to do with her. And Grail, I will have to go back to your messages about Grand Blue Relink. I'm excited for those, but we can all get excited because, like I said, the very last bit of show and tell is all Tales centric. I don't know if it's right to say I saved the best for last, because I really do think the more time I've been spending with my trove or my haul that I brought back, I think I'm most excited about that premium box I got for Tales of Eternia, because it's hard to top that. But I did go on an expedition through a bunch of retro game stores in hopes of basically amassing as many of the Japanese versions of the Tales games as I could. So there are plenty of gaps. I didn't get them all, but some of these, if you're a Western gamer who's played the Western releases, you'll be familiar with them, but many of them have slightly different art, which, as we've done before on the stream, is very fun to look at and appreciate. And then some of these are indeed the much lusted after Japan only releases, which have not been localized yet, but cross your fingers and toes and hope that we get them eventually. So we've got stacks on stacks to get through, but we can go relatively quickly. So speaking of Tales of Eternia, it's right on the top. Again, I've talked about this before, but how nice the quality of that art versus what we got in a much more pared down and, as Pottery rightly pointed out, action-oriented version, just looking at Reed and Farah in the localization that we got in the West. Here's one that still has yet to make it out of Japan. Well, except for this copy, but this is not translated, heartbreakingly. Tales of Rebirth, one which we know from the cameo weapons in Tales of Graces, and which I hope to find a way to play at some point, officially or not, before Tales of Praxis is all said and done. This is art which used to be hard for the West to come by, except then they used it for the remastered version of Tales of Symphonia. But great to call that out, especially since we were talking about the origins of Tales of Praxis and my origins as a gamer in Tales of Symphonia. A different art for the exact game that we're playing from its original Wii version. And we didn't get the Wii version nor the original version in the West. Like we've talked about, we only got the kind of final cut of the Tales of Grace's F. But this was the version on the Wii with this really interesting art of the entire party basically at Asbel's back behind his sword, evoking that idea that he's going to protect everyone, which is central to his character. I think I dropped my controller. I'll have to deal with that in a sec. There we go. You all know, if you're hanging out and you know me, that Tales of the Abyss is one of my favorites. One of my favorite studies that I've done so far as part of Tales of Praxis was an interpretation of it according to its roots in Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah. And so I loved finding this because it was an art that I truly had never seen for the game before, even though I fancy myself to be relatively familiar with the game. But a really nice artwork, which is notable because it includes the entire party in terms of who you would usually think of as the party, and also Ash. But if you know, you know, he is playable for part of Tales of the Abyss, and so in that sense it's kind of showing the full battle party in a nice and touching and thematically resonant way. So I loved discovering that. That was one of my favorites. Another artwork for the game that I'm working on off stream right now and continuing to work on and having a great time with, by the way, Grail, Tales of Hearts. Though again, this is the original version, which was released on the DS, something that we didn't get in the States. We only got the R version, which came to us through the Vita. But another wonderful tableau of all the characters, including a certain very interesting robot whom I just recently met in my playthrough. So I guess this is maybe half a spoiler, but I didn't know there were any proper robot animatronic characters in the games. There are, and they have me interested. Purple Man! Oh, is that the Purple Man that you were talking about, Grail? Maybe I misunderstood you because I had thought you were talking about Amethyst. I could see why you would be more excited about this Purple Man. Although this one does not remind me of Zelos. It's a very different vibe. Since Grail's already excited... Okay, gosh, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm forgetting the most obvious and important character in the series, Mecha Asbel. Excuse me. Grail, I know this one will get you all giddy too. One of your favorites, which I hope to play at some point, Tales of Innocence. Please localize these games, Bamco. We love you. I am putting so much effort and such a percentage of my life into advocating for the value of these games and their philosophical content. I don't ask for a lot in return. You don't have to personally acknowledge me. You can just localize these games and we'll call it Square, okay? Not Square Enix. We'll just call it Square, period. A version of a re-release. I actually didn't even know this was a thing, but they push a lot of the games after their original releases to the PSP in Japan. So a different artwork for Tales of Rebirth for when it came out on the PSP. And Carolo Cross, of course. All right, okay. There are a lot of supplemental funny robots, but in terms of proper party members. Oh, we know it's a Friday stream because Aaron says one thing and we're already memeing through the wind and through the ether. Another artwork which is more ethereal and it just has a kind of arrestingly, I guess, impressionistic quality to it for Tales of Eternia. So again, how different and what a thoughtfully different artistic representation of these characters in a way that I guess now that games are being remastered and remade in the West and people have more attention to the art, we sometimes get alternative artworks on these boxes, but I at least feel like it's far and away rarer than it is the case for these JRPGs and the way that they're re-released and remastered in Japan. So that's part of why I'm having such a fun time showing them all to you. An untranslated sequel for a game that I wrote about earlier this year, and you all know is near and dear to my heart, Tales of Destiny 2. Another one of those, at least in the West, little known, but very well regarded, direct sequels to a Tales game. It's funny because people, myself included, typically say, it's not usual for the Tales games to get sequels because they're all kind of standalone. And I get why people say that. Like I said, I say it because it's nice to kind of gesture at that as a way of saying the series is like Final Fantasy. All the titles are standalone. But the more you actually look and think about the Tales series, it's far rarer, I think, that there are genuinely no follow-ups on any one of the mothership titles. That's part of what we've been talking about with Tales of Graces, that it is unusual by being purely and perfectly standalone. So they find a way of expanding their worlds more often than not, I think. It's a very old school style of artwork, Grail, that PS2 artwork of Rebirth. I'll give you that. In a retro style that is certainly pleasing and evokes a certain aesthetic. Speaking of, if you want sort of a 90s aesthetic, speaking in that same vein, a different artwork for Tales of Fantasia for when it was remade for the PSP, with all those fun bells and whistles that we never got in the West. But we can make do well enough to play it and think about our boy Chester. And then a fun trilogy, again, only one of which we ever got in the West, but the Radiant Mythology games. So very fun. It was interesting because I didn't realize how different the cover art was for all of them, because you have this tableau of the main characters for the first one, and this one was translated for the West, and we have that on PSP, so that's one that's on my list and in fact over on my desk to get through for Tales of Praxis. But then look at that, for Radiant Mythology 2 we have this oceanscape, seascape, beachscape, it almost looks like, hard to tell, with just this comet passing overhead, descending, I'm sure providing key context that Aaron couldn't tell you. And then finally, for Radiant Mythology 3, looking out on the world in this wonderful shot that evokes the key title shot at the beginning of Tales of Zestiria, if you remember that, when Saray and Micleo first head out of their hometown and look out on the big giant world they're going to go explore with the player. And fun too, because I don't know whether this will come through, but if you look on the back, even without being able to play them, you can see the little some of the images of the different cameos that show up in the games, because the whole conceit of Radiant Mythology is they have a story, but they also pull in characters from across the series to go on little kind of side adventures. So you get wonderful little pictures like Flynn and Guy from Tales of Vesperia and Tales of the Abyss on a team up on that one. Yuri on the other side, if you can make it out. It's a little grainy. Are there any other good ones? Stan and Rudy with, I think, some other characters whom I don't recognize, hanging out in the middle back panels there. And, and some more, which maybe I will spoil just because it relates to what I was talking about, but this is the one I'm going to be able to play eventually, or most easily play. We have Zelos and our boy Chester I just published on, hanging out on the back of the first one. So how about that? And I think Ruti and Stan and their son, I think, hanging out on the other side. So there you go. Spoilers for the sequel if you were sleeping on that and waiting for a localization to happen. There you go. I know. I'm excited to play the one that I can actually play, but I'm hopeful to find ways to get through them all if it's possible. Oh, and they rewrite characters as if they always lived in that world. Well, that makes me more excited. And I will say, Grail, like, as much as it kind of seems like a side story because Radiant Mythology is by definition not a mothership title, the closer I get to sitting down and playing it, because I'm really just waiting to be done with Legendia before I sit down and go through it, because I think the Legendia characters are in it also, the more excited I am, because time and again as we go through these games, we talk about the care and the artistry they use whenever they introduce a character as a cameo into a new world. There's always a robust and interesting story behind it. It always makes thematic sense. And so to have an entire full-length game where that's the conceit, I feel like just gives some of their most fun modes of storytelling room to breathe and explore and tell a full story. So I am very, very excited about that. That is, I think, officially the end of my Japan haul. It was so fun. Dan still owes us a podcast with me talking about Japan in some more depth. We're planning to do that this weekend. It was a busy week for him. But I would say, by way of wrapping things up there, it was such a wonderful trip. If you ever have the opportunity to go and you're weighing it in your head, especially if you're a gamer who cares enough about games to find the stream or to find the VOD, don't ask questions, just do it. You'll get so much out of it. That's actually one thing I think that I forgot to mention about the article on Chester that I published, but I hinted that my journeys in Japan would find their way into some of the studies I was doing. And it started with that article with Chester. So I'm actually going to go back up and I'm going to read Grail's review of Grand Blue Relink, which he was talking about. And I'm going to give everyone who has read my article already, so at least you two, Grail and Pottery, the chance to think about what was that allusion I made without making a big deal about it to my Japan trip, and how did that insight lend itself to that article. And if you don't have any ideas, I'll just tell you afterwards, but that'll be a good excuse for Aaron to catch up on what Grail was saying. In terms of gameplay, it's like a mix between the Ease titles. I remember that was something I couldn't pronounce, but I can't remember the right way to pronounce it. And Tales of Arise. Well, you know I'm a big fan of combat in Tales of Arise, so that's something. And a girl who happens to wield a long pointy stick. Well, I'm glad you started with that, Grail, because that tells me everything I need to know in terms of how you feel about the game and why. Spear girl equals yes. That's the real subplot of Tales of Praxis. How can we navigate our way through all the spear girls? You like it more because the bosses aren't tanky, unlike Arise. That's fair. I know that that was a common gripe for you with Arise. And I feel that. I feel like I stomach it more than you do, but I can definitely appreciate that. In terms of the story, you like it because you have experience with the world and cast. I'm sure that can make a big difference, even and perhaps especially in those fighting games. It's a new story and not a retelling, like how you first assumed. That's cool. Always nice to get a brand new story that's in conversation with the older stuff. Oh, and online co-op. Well, it would be fun to play anything with you, Grail, and getting trounced by you in a fighting game, I feel like would be a nice further step to our relationship beyond thinking about JRPGs, and give me more experience in what it's like to play a fighting game with a master. So maybe I'll take you up on that. Just go easy on me. Or don't go easy on me, but just forgive me when I fail. Bottom line of the Grailsy review is that it scratches the tail's itch and is how you'd like the next game to play. Oh, that's interesting. Well, that has me more interested in it too, especially if you see it as a model for where the combat could go from then on. I like that. All right, well, there you go. Check out Grand Blue Relink, everyone, if you're interested in thinking more about the ways in which Tales combat could continue to evolve. I definitely will be. So cheers to that. All right. Well, since no one took me up on my little tongue-in-cheek challenge, so the thing that I took from Japan, among many other perhaps more substantive things, was even though hot springs and public baths are such a huge thing there, I actually never got around to doing one the first time I was there 8 years ago. And I'm a huge fan of just relaxing in extremely hot and therapeutic soaks. That's a big way that I clear my mind even when I'm just hanging out in my apartment. So I told Dan this time, I said, Dan, been hanging out in these Tales games. I forgot how big the hot springs bits are in every single one of the games. We're going to make a point of doing a bunch of hot springs while we were over there, which was great. They were so relaxing. One was a hot spring literally with snow monkeys in Nagano, which was an experience that I'll cherish for the rest of my life. But hanging out in even just one of those community baths, it really gave me a totally different perspective on what that kind of communal culture was like, and sort of the weirdly intimate relationship it can put you in with virtual strangers just by virtue of having this kind of communal experience of relaxation with them. And so that got me to go back and think, all right, well, these hot spring scenes, they're always very funny. Now, they're oftentimes this kind of light reward at the end of the game, but in a decent number of them, maybe even in all of them, I feel like there are some more layers in terms of how they're interacting with the kinds of intimacy that the party does and doesn't develop with one another over the course of the rest of the game, and also overlaying some of the sexual dynamics on top of that in terms of the different ways in which you can become intimate with people to whom you aren't sexually attracted, and people to whom you are. And so it was something that was kind of on my mind, especially coming out of Tales of Berseria, because I feel like that's a really kind of unusually heady and metaphysical hot spring scene, like we talked about after the Heavenly Step. But especially for going back to Tales of Fantasia, I mean, that's one of only 4 or 5 scenes that Chester centrally factors into. And if you look at that juxtaposed against the rest of the scenes, I think it really does serve as a nice conclusion to his arc in a way that is much more than we might expect from something like a hot spring scene, just sitting from the armchair and going by the stereotype of how those scenes work. So many things to glean from Japan, and I'm sure many more of the stories will weave their way into our subsequent adventures. But that's one little cameo from the article that I forgot to mention last time. Arise as a game is fun, but yeah, it has those things you can't stand. I get that. If Tales of Nextia plays more like this game and less like Arise than Tales of the Dead. Well, I got a feeling we don't have to worry about Tales being dead either way. But A, I love the idea of talking about the next hypothetical title as Tales of Nextia. And B, I love the idea that, especially with all of the challenges that you put on these gameplay runs, you're always thinking about what's next in terms of the combat style. That totally tracks with my understanding of you. All right, my dear friends. Well, I think that's what I've got by way of preamble. We're easing our way into a more efficient kickoff again, also, now that we are through some of the concluding motions of the main plot, and now that the publication of my latest article is behind us. But do encourage you to check that out. Look at all of the works. This is a nice time as we're easing into our next study, our next game, but with a little bit of post-game time to spare to get familiar with everywhere we've been, think about how we want those insights and analyses and themes to guide where we're going next. Because this, after all, is a series just as much as the Tales series it interprets and investigates is. And I guess the other thing I'll tease is, I think I've mentioned this before, but really excited because at least a couple old analysts for With a Terrible Fate and at least one new and upcoming analyst are working on some really cool new articles for the publication. So it's been a minute since we've gotten some blood other than mine in the water in terms of authors publishing new works. But it is a publication. It is full-fledged. It is open to any range of video game analysts and thinkers who want to interpret games in this way. So one of the things I love most about it, as with these streams, is sharing a plurality of voices with a plurality of perspectives on what makes these stories so special. So more so than whatever my next work might be, I am so excited to share those works with you and talk about them more once they're published and live and something to talk about. But I won't tease those too much. They're not mine to tease. Now, where were we? All right, so I've loaded up the old cleared game save file, which interestingly enough kicks us back to the climax of Act 3, back in the depths of the Guardia shaft before confronting Richard. And I don't think I had that much I wanted to foreground the stream with this time. We spent a lot of time thinking through our first impressions of the game as an overall unit last time. I'll encourage you, if you have any more thoughts, be liberal with them. They can guide us as we work through the rest. And of course, as thoughts come up in the post-game, we can continue to chat about it. Our analysis is a living, breathing work as much as the source text of the game is. The one other thought I had, which was funny because I didn't process it at the time, but if you think about the adult Sophie talking with Asbel's descendant at that tree, she tells that story without using any names about this boy finding this child who was in need of care and nurturing the child to eventually become the star who accomplished all these things and looked after and protected the world. And it was funny because I was so confident as the fourth act was wrapping up that Sophie was talking about herself. And then I thought after the stream, I said, wait a minute, she said that exact same thing at the end of Act 3. And then I was certain that she was talking about Lambda. And then I thought more and I said, there's a sense in which what she's saying can be applied to anyone on that tree, because Asbel also kind of found Richard in his room in childhood and helped to nurture him and bring him back from darkness and help cultivate him into the person he wanted to be. And I think you could even think about Asbel being nurtured in that same way by Aston growing up, with all the themes of fatherhood and what it was that his dad did for him, even if Asbel didn't appreciate it at the time, and how Asbel grew into another iteration and version of his father. So how special, and what a nice turn of writing, which I think is deeply in tune with what we were talking about at the end of the last stream about the development of an identity through a synthesis and fusion of different individuals, that this wonderfully poetic conclusion of Sophie's could be equally heard as discussing any number of characters in the game, and really in that way speaking to one of the core themes of nurturing and the empowerment of others through a relationship with them that we have seen throughout this game. So really nice conclusive note for Tales of Graces, I think. Unsurprising that a game this thoughtful would end with a final line that ties everything together so well, but I felt like it was worth hammering home. The name of this stream, by the way, if you're curious, comes from a title which popped for me while I was working through prep for this stream, which happened at the 100-hour mark. Once you get to 100 hours, you actually get a title for Malik called Time Traveler. How about that on a week when I just finished publishing an article on Tales of Fantasia? And the description for the title, I love this. It says, 100 hours is a long time for you, but for the party, there is no end to this journey. And I loved that for at least two reasons. One, I loved the way it distinguishes between the amount of time we spend and invest as players and the way in which the story represents this lived life that permeates beyond its boundaries for the characters, all the more so in something like Tales of Graces, which has this fourth act that survives the boundary of the story's natural conclusion. And in that way, it put me in mind of what we were saying at the end of last stream, that special quality of Tales of Graces that gives us this emotional attachment to the characters where we simply want to spend more time with them, even if there's not more story to go along with it. And so it felt like that title was a wonderful acknowledgement of that, and a great thing to acknowledge as we go into this post-game. Also, how cool to have that title of Time Traveler, focusing on the journey of characters and how it relates to the observer for Malik, who, as I mentioned last time, I think bears some interesting parallels with Chester in this way that really, until the fourth act comes around and he has that whole little side quest with the rebels in Fendel, he's quietly reflecting and brooding on his own unresolved past, and yet, because he doesn't have the right context to talk about it with the rest of the party, he's doing so silently, just going through the motions of his activity in order to work through and trying to bodily process that past rather than talking it through with others, not unlike another certain long-range fighting character in the Tales series who came long before him. So I felt that was a nice little tie-in too. Oh no, don't throw in the endless now, Grail. That puts such a darker and more cynical spin on it. Yes. That is interesting. Like, that's almost one of those things I don't want to think about, because I'm going to think about it too hard and it's going to make me too sad, because especially in Tales of Graces F, where there were such nice long conclusions to the character stories setting up what they were going to do next that we saw on Wednesday with all of the happily ever afters that they got. Yeah, to reload the game and to be back in the thick of their confrontation with Richard in the middle of their very anxious and formative years, that does feel kind of almost like an act of torture for them. Speaking of Undertale, I would almost say it's a case in which the game wants us to leave them alone and let them live their lives rather than go back to it. Like it's implying that we should not revisit it, except in a game with post-game content that only becomes available there. I feel like that's not the right conclusion to draw, unless we discover in this post-game content that maybe the content itself is trying to say, oh, you shouldn't have looked into this in the first place. Something like an Old Hunters DLC in Bloodborne, or the Ashes of Ariandel in Dark Souls 3. But that would be an unexpected turn for a Tales game, to say the least. But ooh, all right. Well, on that dark and somewhat somewhat foreboding note, I am excited for this post-game content. Like I was saying to Grail before we kicked things off, I know things kick off here with a skit that direct us one way, but Grail, while we watch that skit, I will leave it to you if you have a sense of what might be better to begin with, or best to start with, or just a general workflow. Feel free to let me know. I'll put that in your court, my friend. Otherwise, we can just feel things through as we go. So, welcome to the post game. I hope it is a nice chill vibe for you, wrapping up your week on a Friday evening. We can enjoy some gaming and, let's say, lo-fi chill beats philosophizing about masterpiece video game stories as we reflect on our most recent analyses of these games, our most recent feelings about this main plot, and gear up for what will undoubtedly be another epic adventure across 2 more games. So nice to take a breath and enjoy ourselves in between. It's all an enjoyment, but you know what I mean. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. All right. Welcome back to Tales of Praxis.
Oh, it's a message from Poisson.
Okay, Riot Peak first.
It must be important if she reached you
I can
all the
do
way
that for
down
you.
here.
Let me see. Boop, 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 boop. And I was wrong. It's from Fourier.
Anything about Lambda?
Nope, wrong again. Apparently, Frederick's been borrowing her lab comp machine since forever, and it sounds like she wants it back.
Come on, we're busy. Have her get it herself.
She says she's busy in her lab. Also, we can get to Lant much faster in the shuttle.
Sounds like we don't have a choice. Let's go find Frederick and take it back. If you insist.
All right. I agree with you there, Grail. It's been such a long time coming for that skit, so I'm going to say let's start with that 100%. I also, let me know if you experience any issues with the sound balance. I was watching some of the VOD, and I don't know if it was just my laptop or if it was coming through on the stream. But if it's an issue, always let me know if there's an audio issue, and I'll do what I can to fix it on the fly. I was getting a little feedback, it sounded like, on at least my replay, because it sounded like I was a little close to the mic for its pickup settings. So I moved the mic back. I'm hoping that will fix things. But like I said, if it has caused cascading issues with the balance or anything like that, let me know, and I can toggle with things on the fly. It's an eternal struggle to perfectly set up this stream rig. It's never fully done. That's part of what makes it fun. It's like a JRPG story. It just has arc after arc to it. Alright, back to the catacombs. Back to the room where it all began. That's right. That's the solution to most things in life, right, Grail? Just do it right the first time. Can't get status afflictions from being hit if you don't get hit. If the 4th act taught us one and only one thing, it's that.
I don't anticipate a challenge. Assault. Hubert, why do you wear glasses?
Because my eyes are bad.
What? Are they dangerous?
Ah, enemies that aren't even worth our time. Isn't that fun? Surely I'm not the only person who has so much fun in the act of going back to super early game areas, confronting all of the enemies who used to give you such a hassle and killing them all in one strike. There's a special kind of satisfaction to that. Restores Eleth when you score a non-damage victory. Man, I'm surprised I missed that. It was right there.
Must you inconvenience us so?
Easy peasy.
That's true. In such a suffering-laden game, both for the characters and for Aaron with his gameplay, it's nice to have an easy breezy area. I love that trick too, Pottery. Absolutely. I feel like the Tales series is pretty good for that. Like, say what you will about the late stage enemies in Tales of Arise, and I know that there's not a lot of love for them on the Ren and Homeworld in this chat, but they definitely accomplished that in terms of making bosses into regular enemies. Ah, Taurus Demon, my beloved. That is my very favorite place in the world to farm souls in the original Dark Souls. Actually, one of my fondest memories from my first playthrough was, I think I got to the Demon Ruins for the first time, and it was during my first like several hour run without dying in Dark Souls, and I decided, you know what, rather than going forward, because I couldn't even access the Bed of Chaos yet, I got there early, I'm just gonna hang out and I'm gonna kill some demons and I'm gonna feel really good about my life. I got really good at killing Taurus demons.
This is the place the four of us came to when we were little.
Do you remember?
I remember that Hubert hid behind Sharia pretty much the whole time.
I did no such thing.
That's right. And then Asbel scared him and he peed.
La, la, la.
Huh? Come again?
This is a private conversation. Just go away. You too? Look, it happens, all right? It happens to everyone in their childhood.
Not me.
Lies. How can you stand there and utter such lies like that?
That was so worth coming back for so many times. Just for his voice acting alone. Hubert's desperate attempt to save face. Yeah, that was worth the trip. How can you just stand there and lie like that? La la la. There's a fun mod to be had if you were to like take Hubert's mystic arts and superimpose the voice acting of him just going la 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 while he's beating the piss out of enemies. Alright, speaking of beating the piss out of enemies, let's see if Warrior's Roost is actually manageable now that we are many, many levels advanced from where we were the last time we were here. So this is an interesting middle ground as well, because in terms of the game's internal timeline, it's not a time travel game in the sense that Tales of Fantasia is, but in terms of the player's journey through the narrative that the game presents to you, it does, seen in that light, ask you to travel time, because it takes you all the way through this long journey of the character's growth and development from childhood all the way to the future where they're thinking about who they want to be, and then it puts you back in the middle of that development for the post-game stuff. That's I think a non-trivial amount about post-games, because I think you have a lot of degrees of freedom when you're designing them in terms of whether you're going to put the player back to something earlier in the game or put them in a whole new area, do it like a further plot line somewhere else, or even, like create a post-game in a world after the final boss has been defeated versus one that only happens in a world before the final boss has been defeated. Ni no Kuni, in my study that I wrote of that, I think it has a very interesting and thematically salient post-game. So thinking about the way in which the Tales games situate their post-narrative content, I think would bear a lot of fruit as well. Oh, you gotta find that joke video for me if you can, Grail. That sounds hilarious. I can picture it so vividly, too, based on that description. What do you mean, Grail? I'm not sure I follow that. Are you just saying why is it that they like have a conclusion at the end of the third act before they then give you the opportunity to pick up Act 4? Like, why do they make it feel optional as opposed to just extending the game so that it feels like one overall arc? Alright, let's see how this goes. I'm gonna be ambitious and not start from the beginning. Let's see how bad things are up here on floor 26. Y'all ready for this? Oh, I wish you guys hadn't reminded me of those colored floor tile puzzles. We could puzzle in dread about those. It's not a good vibe for a Friday night, you guys.
We will survive.
Let's just talk about Little Queen more. That's something that I can deal with. Literary and philosophical interpretation is not as hard as those floor tile puzzles. Yeah, well, that's exactly the kind of contrast I was thinking about, Grail, because, you know, you can say what you will about, oh, it would be hard to develop the new content into the fourth act or whatever, but with something like Vesperia's Definitive Edition as a pretty clear and compelling example of them integrating all the new content into a single and cohesive experience. That's certainly not to say that the way that they did it in Graces is worse, but it is, I think, different in a noteworthy way, right? Because we have that other model of what it is for that kind of edition to be seamless and the aesthetic and narrative effects that is conducive to. And then we have this other thing which feels very different, right? Where we have to, as you point out, elect in the first place to go through this arc watching the characters grow up. We're not naturally fed into it, so that already does kind of feel like a post-game where it doesn't have to. They could have designed it otherwise. And then, to get to the post-game, it kicks you back to how things were before that arc. And it may well just be an artifact of like the development process of how it was that they built F on top of the base game, but it still leaves me wondering, like, when we look at all of the other themes that Tales of Graces is concerned with, can that structure resonate with those themes? Can it add something insightful to the journey that it wants to take the player on? Or is it just something that is held together by duct tape and string and we just have to be okay with it and it doesn't add anything on top of the rest of it? Knowing the Tales series, I would suspect that it probably can be interpreted as saying something interesting that's consonant with the rest of the game. Grail, I'm trying to remember, do you have a canned answer for who you think the sexiest taleswoman is, or is it just deeply offensive to you that anyone would choose Little Queen of all the characters available?
This is the last four.
I know in Zestiria you were a Lila boy for days. I just couldn't remember if that was your end-all be-all answer for the entire series. All right, this is voiced. Getting serious. Let's listen in. Ah, the Guardian!
I thought you might be the ones. You know of us?
Is that our friend from the cover of Tales of Rebirth, or am I just blending all of my various heroes together? I feel like I just stared at that face in a PS2 rendition.
You fought on this island before.
Blank stare, man, from Rebirth. It's him.
I sensed your power even then.
Veigue. What a
We
great
are
name.
honored to be known by one of the Guardians.
It seems you've traveled the length and breadth of this world.
How could you know such a thing?
I watched you from here.
No way! You can't follow us around from the top of a tower.
I grew up in the mountains. My eyesight is excellent.
What a line.
I seek information that you may be able to provide me with.
What information?
I'm searching for something.
It's a Western localization of my game. Can you help me find it, please?
That's awfully vague. I suppose you'd tell us what it is.
Boo! Asbel made the one dad joke of the night. Now I can't make one.
Don't tell me this is the reason you became a guardian in the first place.
Correct. And I cannot give up until I find what I seek.
Well, do we know that though, Grail? Because he says he's looking for something. Maybe it's a way back to his homeworld, right? Don't have all the
Must
information
be a
yet.
relative, or a lover, or an old friend that's like a sister to you.
Well, you may know that from having played it before, but I don't know it.
That must be it.
If we win, will you tell us what it is you seek? Hubert, wait. This will ensure that he gives all to the fight. And that's a good thing? We came here to test our strength. To battle against a hesitant guardian would defeat the purpose. I suppose you're right.
And if I win, you will tell me everything you know.
Deal.
Prepare yourselves.
Veigue, please. I'm just a boy. I'm not even as grown up as I was in the F arc. And now we don't have Richard, and I'm sad. I think this will do. But I want to make sure we check Hubert's loadout. And yeah, pottery, just so we don't lose the thread before I slide into combat. Those artistic reasons definitely make sense to me. So then I think the follow-up that's interesting to ask and think about, because now that we're teasing it out a little more, I'm more confident that there probably is a good thematic answer to the structure of Tales of Graces. So if we think about it as not just concerned with the forward passage of time, as you say, but also in terms of the structural elements of making the player go out of her way to choose to undertake the fourth act through a menu, like Grail said, and then also going back in time after that future arc and future development to revisit new content in the past. Like, how can we schematize those two choices and kind of journeys through time in terms of Grace's themes? I imagine part of it wants to say something about the intentionality with which we move forward and shape ourselves in the future, and then also the way in which perhaps characters like Malik with his past in Fendel and Sophie with her origins in Little Queen have to go back after having grown up to renegotiate the past. So maybe that's it. Maybe it's like we were talking about with Malik and his side quest in the fourth arc, or Sophie coming to terms with Little Queen. Maybe part of the interesting thing about this game that sounds right to me is it's kind of showing you through its story that you have to figure out how to grow up on your own to a certain point before you can actually revisit and get traction on how your own past has shaped you. Because we see the characters like, you know, Asbel wrestling and getting no traction on his family heritage as a kid, but then, you know, ages later after so much development, he's able to go back and revisit and make sense of that as the Lord of Lant and think about his dad in a way that wasn't available to him before. So maybe it's a way of metafictionally showing and giving us the experience of that. I would buy that. Okay, oh no, then they make it a solo fight? Oh, Grail, I don't know if I have that in me. That sounds more like a you thing. It's nice that they give you the option, though. Let's try... I was trying to remember the gem that I had on Richard. Let's do that one. Oh, well, if you didn't beat him, Grail, there's no hope for me. So I'll just do the party one. Oh, that's fair. That also feels like a very you reason not to revisit it. Okay, take a deep breath. Everyone brace yourself. And let's go.
Everyone stay on your game.
What level are you, Veigue? I gots to know. Levitine. That is a very cool name for a sword. Oh, he's only level 60. Alright, I'm much less scared now. Maybe I shouldn't be. I feel capable. At least we are allowed to use items ever. Unlike in some Tales fights that shall remain nameless. I didn't even catch the description. That's hilarious, though. See, and this, like, on the one hand, I love that we at least have things like this to give us a window into these characters. But on the other, much truer hand, it just makes me that much more frustrated that they haven't actually localized their source games. Like, if you're gonna give us second-hand access to Veigue, give us the real thing, please. We just love your stuff so much, Bamco. Please, let us enjoy all of it. It's a very cool attack. Man, those combo mystic arts are really great to get on. Okay, so in the regular arc, Asgard just says this is the end, as opposed to it's you and me, Lambda. I miss Lambda. Bring him back. Padre, I like that way of thinking about it, but I gotta ask, are you even that way when it comes to cameos in the Tales series? Because one of the reasons that I spend so much time talking about them on the stream is that in basically every other IP, I share your sentiment. Like, I'm never one for crossover episodes or stuff like that, but I just feel like there's a special language and care that the Tales games give them that really piques my interest in a way that I don't get elsewhere.
We did it, Sophie.
So I don't know if that's just a me thing or if you feel the pull of that. Soul Calibur reference. Wow, that's interesting. And interesting that they would do something so campy for the main character of one of their games when it wasn't even one of the first games. Like, I could imagine that more as the sort of thing that would, you know, maybe they would do as a fun tie-in to get a series off the ground, but when you've already had such standalone heroes as Stan and Reed and Cress, like, it's an interesting choice to make. All right, well, we got a fancy new sword.
You are indeed strong. And now you must keep your word. What are you searching for?
A sword.
Oh,
You sound disappointed.
I'm just a bit of a romantic is all. Don't mind me.
It is the strongest sword I can wield. My entire will is bent upon finding it.
Oh, and now I just want to play this game more if his entire character is built around special swords. You know my thing.
But for various reasons, I am unable to leave this place and search it out.
Well, maybe we could look for you.
You would do that?
We would, yes. There's still a lot of the world we want to see after all.
This is how people live together.
Yeah, I suppose.
Living together. Yes, I like the sound of that.
If we find something, we will bring it here straight away.
Check this island's requests for further details, and thank you.
We make no guarantees, but we will try our best.
I am in your debt.
Oh, that was very cool. I love that simple yet characteristically profound thing that Sophie said when Asbel said, yeah, we can go and get the sword for you, and Sophie just said, this is how people live together. Just like being willing to help someone else and go out of your way to do something that they want yet are unable to do for themselves. Very Tales, very Graces. Yeah, all right, Pottery. Well, we definitely, as you know, we definitely all, myself included, have our biases when we come to any sort of art. So I can respect that. Thank God, the true prize, overalls, and a victor's badge. All right, victory over one of the Guardians. Raising the question: are there more cameos with the other Guardians? Yeah, and it is definitely worth remembering, as you guys point out. I mean, Namco is famously campy and cross-referencey about its games, which I feel like, and again, maybe I'm just a Tales apologist at this point, and that's not the worst thing that you could call me, so I'll take it. But especially in a series that was developed and published by a creative entity that had that kind of campy cross-referencing in its DNA, to take that and then breathe new life into it, where they weave these characters into other stories in a way that virtually always adds new thematic insight into the character who's making the guest appearance and also sheds new light on the story. Like, I just feel like there's a special magic to that, where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Like my most recent touchstone for that, I think, is still one of the best ones, the Tales of Arise cameos. Like, that was such a touching way for me to crystallize a lot of what I hadn't quite put my finger on about Edna and Aizen's relationship across Zesty and Bestie, and also a lot of what the gang was up to in their efforts to reunify and restructure the worlds in Tales of Arise.
So it's over?
Not enough. Really? Are you still berserking out?
You're darn tootin'. I could have kept going for hours. Pascal's a girl, Captain. Girls don't go berserking out. But it wasn't enough. I need more. Okay, enough. Just calm down and I'll cook you a banana pie. Yay! Wow. Don't copy her, Sophie. If you're hungry, just say
Crablets,
so.
please.
Pascal's infecting everyone.
Ooga! What? Everyone else was doing it? Oh dear.
I had 3 guesses which of those voice acting performances was my favorite. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be quicker to point out the things in Tales games or Namco games that are not references, but also fun, and I think also speaks to the depthness of the series that many of those references are ones that are not especially obtrusive. Like, sometimes they're clearly meant to be called out and noticed, like the ice sculpture of Pac-Man and Flanor, but oftentimes, like, if you don't know them, it's not as, you don't feel like you're missing out on anything, but if you do know them, it adds some nice extra layer of context to you. That which the 3 swords symbolize is the key. If I had caught that back when we were going through here for the first time, I'd probably know what it was referencing. Oh, it might say down here, though. Riot Peak. Okay, we can finally open that chest from way back when. The Tower of Druaga, also, for those who don't know, Grail, you probably know this, but was the, I think, well, it depends on how you count. I guess not the very first EX dungeon, because the Dwarven Mines in Tales of Fantasia are probably the first one, properly speaking, but the Tower of Druaga, speaking of super references, was like the big optional dungeon in Tales of Destiny. Way back in the day. Peak. That does strike me as an extreme position, Pottery. So, no argument from me there. Spellbook that doubles the duration of cooked dishes. Ooh, very nice. And look, I'll reiterate, I think in the big picture, I think it's one of those many cases where you and I are same brain, because especially if I'm like watching a show and they'll try to juice their ratings by throwing in a character from another show that has no business being there, or I would say a closely related phenomenon when shows try to do a backdoor pilot to kick something else off by like vampirically leeching off of the goodwill of the show. I also really don't like those things, but I never ever get any of that sentiment that you're talking about from the Tales cameos. And again, I might be biased in the other direction at this point towards the Tales series, and I might just be too close to it. But I think, especially given the aversion that I typically have to that, I think it speaks further to the approach of the storytelling and integration in these games that they're able to get away with it. Yeah, and to be fair, when I'm being an apologist, I'm talking about like the tie-ins inviting actual other characters from the other Tales games into the stories, which I think maybe it's also even just a part of the commentary on the way in which they like weave and juxtapose the worlds against each other, where that's part of why we're doing the study of the series, right? It's really interesting that these games share so much DNA and seem to be in conversation with one another despite putatively being in separate worlds. And I feel like the kind of trading of characters across those lines only further play with those boundaries in a cool and very thematically salient way. When you devolve into further campiness of just throwing in a bunch of other Namco references and tie-ins to other games like the SEO DLC for Tales of Arise, then that's where I too kind of get off the boat. So it's a limited exception that I'm talking about here. I will say, to the point that you guys are talking about also, like, it still grinds my gears when there is campy crossover DLC, like the SAO one that I was mentioning, but for whatever reason, I do find myself more forgiving of it when it's DLC that you can pay for if you're a huge super fan of whatever crossover they're playing to, but you don't have to care about otherwise, as opposed to something that they hard code into the game itself and force you to contend with. Maybe because in the latter case, it feels like they're insisting it's part of the core experience, even though by definition it's something that's being drawn in from outside that fictional world in the context of the game. Whereas if it's DLC, it's like almost like a mod, right? Like you're choosing to bring in your own experience and other fandom in a way that's okay. Alright, so Veigue is looking for Requiem, a sword forged by the world's best blacksmith. If you find it, please deliver it to the requests area. Alright, well, we did that. Grail, do you have a sense of where we ought to go next? We can go to Lant, see Frederick, go elsewhere. Oh, it's from a Lant side quest, the Requiem. Well, maybe it makes sense to go back to Lant in either case then. Yeah, I think with that question about DLC and kind of bringing in other fandoms, I do feel like it would be hard to get traction on this question because there are just a lot of variables, but I feel like there's an interesting question you can pose where, given that games tell these interactive stories, and as we talked to death on With a Terrible Fate, so many games make interesting narrative meaning out of the agency that the players have in them and their ability to influence these worlds and stories from the outside, is there a particular logic or rules of permissibility and impermissibility in terms of how players can bring their own context and preferences and fandoms from other worlds into the games? So is there a way to make it feel internally consistent and motivated by the world that the player would be able to bring in artifacts and ideas from other fandoms? I'll say for my part, especially the temporal intersection EX dungeon of Tales of Arise, but also even the islands to mine and explore in the Desolation in Tales of Berseria, those feel to me like good examples of in-world justification for the player drawing in these concepts and things with which she's familiar from other Tales games, but I don't know how far that does or doesn't reach. The guide says long because that's where the quest finishes, but it's a long chain that starts in Grailside. Okay. Oh, I'm kind of interested in the sword, and we just saw Veigue, so maybe we can go to Grailside first. Just wondering, do we have any other seeds at this point? I'm so glad to see all these flowers blooming. Me too. You really like flowers, don't you, Sophie? I do now. They make me happy when they bloom. That's great. Hey, what's that? There's something shiny there. Looks like some kind of seed. I don't remember you planting any seeds like this. Sorry, but is that? No, it can't be. You're from the item shop, right? Do you know what this is? My, I never imagined I might see this. That, young lady, is the seed of an incredibly rare plant. Did you hear that, Sophie? That's great. You should plant it right away. Don't be too hasty. If that's what I think it is, it could be difficult to care for. You'll need to keep an eye on it every single day. What do you want to do, Sophie? Will you take care of it, mister? Are you sure, Sophie? These are your flowers, after all. Yeah, and this one sounds pretty rare. I'm sure. As long as this flower blooms and makes everyone happy, I'll be happy too. That's a fine attitude. I promise to take very good care of it. It should bear fruit when it's ready, so be sure to come over to the shop then. Thank you for taking care of my baby. Oh, your baby. I guess you're like its mother, huh? Yep. Wow. That was such a nice tie-in to at least 2 or 3 themes from the 4th act. And that was nice too, because I feel like when we were here before, we were short 1 seed, so I don't know if it was by like the grace of Little Queen or Lambda and us traveling back through time that it just did us the kindness of completing it for us, but that was such a nice, very Sophie-themed conclusion to that side quest. And look at that flower bed. So nice to see the fruits of her labors. As we trample it, why is Asbel able to do that? That feels bad.
Look at all the flowers. Thank you, Sophie. What for, Sharia? Till now, there were never enough flowers to really call this a flower bed. It makes me happy. Then, you're welcome.
In a little while, we should go ask about that seed we gave to the item merchant.
He said the seed might be something rare. And if that's true, it's all thanks to you, Sophie.
Thanks to me. Yes. Let's go see.
It's probably too early to check, but I simply have to check. Yeah, and Padre, for what it's worth, this is part of why I say I think we're at a higher level aligned about the gripe that you're talking about, because I think I'm too out of the loop on broader cameo stuff to have that special ire towards it that you have, but I get it all the time when I think about just the sheer numeracy of remakes and reimaginings and adaptations out there. Like, oh my god, especially with movies, the number of things that are just constantly remade as opposed to a new original story with its own conceit and its own point of view. It does seem just kind of, in some cases at least, replicative purely out of laziness. with no kind of real achievement or point of view behind it. And of course, that's an overgeneralization, but just when I see the broader landscape of things, and you think about what could have been instead. In the case of cameo stuff, that's similar to what I imagine when I see a lot of that. All the clearer with the exception that proves the rule, right? Like, look at something like Final Fantasy Remake, as we're continuing to get hyped for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And I think it just shows how much so many other reimaginings or remakes of games and movies and stories just pale in comparison and are frankly just, in some cases at least, limp and poorly conceived cash grabs. But again, similar to what you said about your stance on cameos, I recognize that's a relatively extremist view. Although I don't know, I feel like more people I see nowadays are getting visibly exhausted by that and are kind of catching up to where I've been for a while. Yeah, I guess we are maybe too early here. Okay, to Grailside. Oh, there's a side quest in Sharia's house too. Great. Also, the exception that proves the rule, if you're frustrated by cameos, really perfectly in-world nuts cameo stuff. Like my favorite example from the perennial masterpiece, the Nier series, but the DLC for Automata that lets you fight like I think it's the president of Square Enix, right, in their Coliseum, like, which sounds like hot nonsense, but if you know the Nier world, it is exactly the kind of hot nonsense that is supported by its particular aesthetic and storytelling. I don't know, Grail. I think just to hurt you, probably. This is why we can't find the right things ever. Well, let's go to Grailside, and maybe we can sort out the other stuff to do while we're there. But see, I think, especially if you hate cameos, I feel like you have to love that fight because it's like, it's such the perfect lampoon of everything that storytellers typically do with cameos. To the inn! Alright, I think that's in this direction if memory serves. Well, a slightly different beast could be plastered on virtually all of Nier's content, yes. Definitely has its own Yoko Taro-ness to it, let's say. That Yoko Taro-y aftertaste. What can I do for you today? I don't know. A business application with the Toidles. Alright. Thank you, my anonymous hero. I can keep my business running. Alright. Got skits out the wazoo.
Say, Asbel, just between us men, how are things going with Sharia?
With Sharia? I fear that's too subtle for my brother to follow. I'm lost. Do you know what he's talking about, Hubert? Because I really don't.
Perhaps my poor teaching skills are to blame for this.
If there's something you want to ask, just come right out with it. I'll see you gentlemen outside.
Oh, wait for me.
Captain? Ah, hell, there's no toilet paper. Captain? Hubert? Anybody?
So I was gonna say, I love that skit, just because it's so rare to see a skit where everyone has their backs turned to the camera, and that gives us such a fun vantage point as an audience, but also the fact that it became clear it was a skit of them in the men's room talking together, like layers and layers of fun and unusual skit-based storytelling. I need a side quest. Holding out for a side quest till the end of the night. Is that you, Annie? I've been looking for you everywhere. Are you another rebirther, Joe? I truly couldn't tell you. Well, actually, I guess I could look at the box. Can I identify the character based on a box? I can! It's you! It's Boy from Box. See? Boy from Box. My cheat sheet to this side quest chain. Who? Oh dear, you're not Annie, are you? I'm Sophie. Please forgive me. It's alright. Who are you? My name's Fiery Joe. I'm searching for my lost brother and sister. Fiery? Yes, I can set fire to Elith to produce flame, if you will permit me to demonstrate. Oh, he's not? He looks a lot like a character from Rebirth, based on this little window from the box. Oh dear me, I'm so sorry. Please allow me to escort you to the hospital. Don't worry, I'm okay. How can this be? You should be dead, or at least grievously wounded. He has big main character from a JRPG energy for not actually being another character from Rebirth in a quest that pertains to a character from Rebirth. No, this cannot stand. I insist that you punish me for this transgression. No. We don't do that in a post-Symphonia world. Only Rain Sage can get away with that. Go on. Spank me. Only the firm hand of discipline can hope to change my errant ways. Are you sure? Yes. I want you to hit me as hard as you can. And that's how Joe died. It's heavenly! Oh no. You never know what you're going to get in a Tales post-game, right? I was going to say I wasn't prepared, but I should have known enough to expect the unexpected. You're even stronger than my brother. It's like the stars themselves came down from the sky to strike my behind. But now, I must be off to find Annie and Kaz. I pray we meet again. Someday. Okay. Tee-hee. Wait, so are we? So is this guy a cameo? I'm confused. What are we saying? So he's not from Rebirth, but are we saying he's just perfectly nuts in the way that is germane to Tales of Graces, or are we saying that he's from another game? Like we couldn't get this kind of nuts if he were a cameo and he's not. He's just a Graces character. Yeah. Well, I guess especially in a game like this where it does have its own special flavor of weirdness, it's very hard to replicate or supplement that from another game. Although I will add, continuing in the Apologist vein, we've said many a time that part of what makes this particular Tales title special is that it has a lot that kind of insulates it with its own unique style and mode of representation and themes, even within the Tales oeuvre. So it might be even harder for outside references to penetrate that than it might be in the case of another game. With heavenly punches and sharp kicks, she offers her opponents a little taste of heaven. Okay, but the Flower Girl one has Critical Blade on it. Yeah, I want that. Cool. Okay, we're going to all the inns, so Barona Inn is next. Fabulous. Listen, I'm a big fan of a Final Dungeon staircase. This is so interesting because, again, like when I think fighting game, I don't think of campaigns in the way I think of a JRPG story. But hearing you talk about it, it's got me really interested to give it a try. Especially if you think it could be a model for a Tales game. Tarkaron. What am I confused about? Oh, and Relink is not a fighting game? Is that it? I assumed because they were both Grand Blue, they were both fighting games. So, that is on me. These Japanese series, man, they exist in too many different design languages for an outsider to keep up with. That's funny, though. All the more reason for me to try it out then, since it's much more in my sweet spot. Aaron finds thing in Baruna on the first try challenge. Impossible. This is a fun way to encourage players to actually explore these inns, because I'm realizing now that I hadn't really processed how many rooms there are in all of them. Because you usually just avail yourself of the front desk. Alright. Will they both be spanked this time? Tune in, find out. Go on, Joey. You're welcome to eat all you want. Yes, Annie. Hey, are you okay? Isn't that Fiery Joe? That voice. It's my angel. Hey, you're that weird kid we met at the Grailside Inn. Is he alright? Maybe we should get him to a doctor. He's fine. Little Joey here just couldn't take how delicious my cooking was. Sorry, who are you? Annie. I'm Joey's sister and a professional chef. Joey here just can't stop gushing about how yummy my cooking is. The kid's been eating it this whole time. Is there something you'd like to tell us, Joey? Annie's cooking is the best in the world. Oh, Joey, you must still be hungry. It's heavenly. Dude, I think he just passed out. Silly boy. My food was so good it sent him off to paradise. Come now. I insist you all have some of my cooking before you go. I'll whip up a new batch right away. Okay, dig in. Oh, that's so funny, Grail. And what another Japanese gameism that the series would start as a phone gacha game, but evolve into something much more sophisticated like the later titles. But hey, Pocket Monsters, right? Talk about starting in a gacha world and becoming something much, much larger than that. Thanks. Yes, thank you. I'm realizing I hadn't had to voice anything for quite a while since the fourth act was basically completely voiced. Didn't you miss this? This tastes like the sole of my boot. What's happening? I can't stop shaking. Shh, Annie will hear you. Sophie, don't spit it out. I guess you weren't hungry, huh? Maybe I shouldn't have made all that food. No, it's fine. We should have said something earlier. Wah! Where am I? Poor kid doesn't even remember. Oh, hello, Joey. You're up early today. I can't believe how much of her food that kid choked down. No wonder he saw paradise. Oh my, look at the time. Come now, Joey. It's time to eat. More food? Oh, and I packed lunches for the rest of you. It's some of my best work yet. Salisbury steak. Well, that's a normal looking dish. Hope it's not secretly poisoned Salisbury steak. Oh man. I feel like I'm on a quest to forge the Big Oron sword in Ocarina of Time with all of the crazy, seemingly unrelated nonsense errands that we're running in order to get the legendary best weapon in the world. Okay, so are we going to Sable Izole next? If we're just going down the list, I would imagine that's the next one. Unless there's one in the port town, but I think that inn is just a stall.
Doesn't all this combat make you tired, Sophie? No, not really. Because you always use healing arts to tend to my wounds. I'm not talking about wounds, Sophie. Exhaustion is something else. Don't you ever just wanna collapse? Yes. Well, that's exhaustion. And when that happens, doesn't it help to rest? I'm okay. The captain and I always have a long talk to help me fall asleep. Captain Malik, I don't mind if a little chatter comes up before bed, but what are you two always talking about? It's nothing weird, right?
That's up to the dice. Painful stories, memorable lessons. The numbers we roll determine the topic.
It's kind of a fun game to play.
Sophie can really shoot the breeze.
Shoot the breeze?
Conversational RNG. Be a fun thing to try sometime. Oh, that's interesting, Grail. I love that you've been revisiting it with fresh eyes. Do you have a sense of what has made the difference for you, changing it in your estimation over the years? Oh, this inn is also just a stall, though. So maybe Liberta. I know there's a proper inn there. Inn with a capital I. We definitely have to also try at least once during this post-game to suck it up and sit down and play Magic Carta, even with the slew of characters that Aaron won't recognize. Oh, okay. It's because I skipped Ulray, so I've got to go to literally every city in town. Got it. But we found another person to talk to, so let's do that. Hubert? Marion, is that you? Oh, you remember me. You two know each other? More or less. What are you doing on the way out here? I came here to start my own gem polishing business. It was great at first, but a few days ago I kind of lost all my tools. Did you try posting a request about it? Sure did. Just now, in fact. So, who are your friends? Sherry has an old childhood friend, and the big lunk over here is my brother Asbel. Nice to meet you guys. I'm Marion. Hey, Marion. Anyway, I should probably get going to Sable Izole and post my request there, too. Sable Izole? Yeah, that's where I just come back from when I noticed the missing tools. I think I dropped them there, or perhaps somewhere along the way. It seems like a lot of trouble to reclaim some old used tools. Why not just buy some new ones and be done with it? Oh, that's right. While we're in Strata, I'm also remembering we had the whole other over-leveled monster path in the desert that I think leads to a dungeon also, right? We never did that. Oh, we got all kinds of post-game content. Help me. I know, but they kind of mean a lot to me. Well, see you around, Hubert. We could look for those tools, you know? They seem really important to her. And if she dropped them out in the desert, we can't expect someone else to just happen upon them. They might even have been eaten by a monster. If you want to hunt down the tools, I have no objections. Even more into Hubert's past at the time after he left Lant. Yeah, great character design can go such a long way in a game, in a story, right? Especially when it's layered with a fighting system that you're really intrigued with and enjoy working through. Wow, nice. That sounds like a really natural way of kind of falling into it and getting motivated to discover more over the years. You know, isn't it funny how that goes too? Because I know it's been the same way for me too. You could even say this about my relationship with the Tales games a bit, where sometimes you find a game and even if it's your kind of game, it just doesn't quite hit you at the right moment or it doesn't connect with you, and then you maybe play another game, maybe you pick it up with someone, maybe you're just at a different point in your life and you suddenly get really inspired to maybe look into a character more, maybe have reason to explore the lore and think about how the story fits with the other ones. Our relationships with these stories and games can oftentimes be long and varied and perpetually unfolding ones, certainly not one-dimensional.
A master of blades and a master of guns? You're pretty hardcore on the old battlefield, little bro.
Well, I suppose there are some who have voiced that opinion.
In the old days, Hubert was more bookish. Actually, he was pretty much a homebody.
Interesting.
My man.
Where did you train? Your gear certainly isn't standard issue weaponry.
I'm self-taught. I studied printed materials and replicated what I read.
That's incredible. I'd love to see these materials of yours.
I'm afraid not. Those materials are now a classified military secret.
You know, Hubert, I was thinking back.
Yes?
That weapon you use is the same one as the hero from our old Troll Caliber comics back home. Is that
Troll
where you learned his
Caliber.
style?
Speaking
Everything
of
is
Cam.
really similar.
Uh-huh.
Military secrets indeed.
Asbel?
Troll Caliber 4 lets you play as Yoda. He's green, so it's a troll tie-in. It's a very high-minded joke in case you missed that. Kaz, I didn't know you went overseas. Sorry about that, Joey. But you know me. I go where I want, when I want. If you don't like it, I'll give you a good spanking. Yee! Now, Kaz, it's not nice to bully your brother. Who was the guy from Final Fantasy 13 who had a chocobo in his hair? Was it... Because it was a name like Kaz, wasn't it? Does anyone know what I'm talking about? I feel like this has to be a reference to that. Characters. Saz Katzroy. Thank you, Pottery. Yes, you would know. So this was... Because that was... What year did that come out? This feels like it's an obvious reference, but Aaron needs to be sure. Wow! Well, I regret looking that up because it made me feel really old. The original Final Fantasy 13 came out in 2009. So yeah, this definitely has to be an allusion to that, which makes me feel like the other ridiculously colorful characters are also allusions to games, but I couldn't place them to save my life. But when it's that close, I feel like, and especially when the release dates are that close, like, Japan isn't that big. It was probably in the ether. We gotta go back to Japan. We'll find the developers, we'll hunt them down, and we'll ask them. Oh, hello everyone. Are you visiting Strata too? I think I've mentioned this before. Final Fantasy 13 was my very first Final Fantasy title when I was growing up, which was a really weird way of entering the series because it's probably one of the more controversial titles. I myself have very mixed feelings about that trilogy. But yeah, sometimes the weird points of entry are the best ones to incentivize you to further dig in and discover it. Oh, hello everyone. Are you visiting Strata too? Oh, did it really come out a week before? Well, I wonder about those development cycles though, because sometimes I feel like when they're in tandem development, maybe you might have learned something from the other team or something, or it's just like Leibniz and Newton. Was it Leibniz and Newton who independently came up with calculus with no knowledge of each other working on it? Sometimes that stuff does also just happen. Clearly this is on the same par as that. That's right, and that must be your brother, huh? I'm glad you found him. And just who are you? We're acquaintances of your siblings. Hey, I can see wings on your back. Wings? That's right, like this. Pow, 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 pow! And now the final touch. Pow! It's heavenly! Hey, what's the big idea? You just cleaned his clock. Ha ha ha, look at him fly. Oh, Kaz, you just got a new idea, didn't you? That unusual blade you hold has given me inspiration. You did it, Kaz. I knew you could. Are you okay? My angel, I'm glad to see you here on the ground. All right, Joey, we need to make preparations. Yes, sir. Thank you for your help, Winged One. Move it, Joey. That's why he had to leave the scene so quick, Pottery. He had to go back and figure out how to save his son. That was Saz's whole raison d'etre, right? Because he was a Seath, or his son was a Seath, or his son died or something. It's probably been since 2009, since I played 13. What the heck was that about? I have no idea. What is going on with this side quest? In the darkness, we are all Lloyd Irving. We gotta revive the tree on Lant Hill. Apparently, this is what you call someone who gives you ideas. Oh man. I saw you ask something, Grail. Do I have more thoughts about Little Queen and Fodra Queen? I don't know if they've really unfolded more since Wednesday. I think well, I'll add one thing, and this is less of a developed thought than the stuff that I had at the end of the stream, but the idea of collective consciousness, especially consciousness that derives from energy sources, runs really deep in the series. So we talked about like the aggregate sentience of Rena, but of course that's also a thing with Lorelei and the various aggregate sentiences of the phonons in Tales of the Abyss, and even in Tales of Eternia. That's a really interesting case because Eternia is it's not the source code for the summon spirits because you get them in Tales of Fantasia, but I would say that a lot of the kind of infrastructure and lore for how we think about summon spirits in the more modern series comes from Eternia. And there too, the summon spirits, which are called Kramels, are these like aggregate entities that derive from the sum of basically all of these monads in the philosophical sense, in the Leibnizian sense, actually. Speaking of Leibniz, like these individual little minds that are like different aspects of the element. So Undine, for instance, emerges from the collection of all of these different souls that are manifested in droplets of water, basically, right? And so I thought it was really interesting, just as another lens for thinking about Little Queen and the Fodra Queen. Is this not where we go next? You can tell me where we go next while we're talking about this, Grail, because I think I went to the wrong place. So I thought one thing that struck me as quite interesting about the Little Queen and Fodra Queen relationship is that in the Tale series, when you have those ideas of an aggregate consciousness, you don't usually see consciousness both on the levels of like the aggregate entity, so the god or the spirit of the planet or whatever, and also in terms of all the little individual constituents that come together to make that entity. So, which is to say, like in something like Tales of Eternia, right? You see all of the droplets of water come together to make Undine, but you're not going to stop and have a conversation with one of the water droplets, right? It's either just this inert element or one part of Undine. And so I think it's really interesting, and I think a nice beat on the themes that Act 4 is concerned with, for us to see both all of the little queens and then also the single sentience of the Fodra queen. Because again, you might think that all of the little queens are just mouthpieces for the single sentience, but we end up seeing quite clearly that that's not the case in that touching, gut-wrenching moment with the one little queen who's left behind, whom Sophie then takes in and integrates into a part of herself. So I think it opened the door and got me thinking a little bit more about the idea of, you know, is there a sense in which there's something kind of authoritarian about these collective consciousnesses, right? Because we see authoritarianism and a kind of fascism at play philosophically in something like the Abbey in Tales of Berseria, where we have that ideology that's imposed across the world to control everyone's forms of thought. But usually when we think about summon spirits and these fundamental elements of the world, there's just this idea that they have a clear sense of how the world should be, and there's nothing kind of hegemonic or authoritarian about it. They just, because they're part of the natural world order, they clearly perceive and enact that world order. But something clearly has gone wrong with the Fodra Queen, you know, where she herself is out of balance with the cosmos, taken over by hatred, as Landa says at the end. And so to have this model of a collective consciousness, like we see throughout the series, but then say, you know, one consequence of something being an aggregate consciousness is that when its aspects are out of balance, then the aggregate can also be warped and distorted and corrupted as an individual and want the wrong things. So you need to heal the collective in order to heal whatever entity has emerged out of it. That feels, again, very Tales of Graces in terms of how it's concerned with individuals making sense of and healing themselves through these kinds of multifaceted identities that they form in relation to the groups that they're a part of, right? So kind of healing the one by healing and identifying the many in a way that kind of tracks both the particulars of the universe and the high-level gods of the cosmos. So I thought that was cool to think about, and I could see that being a good study, comparing something with like the Queen of Fodra with Lorelei and Rena and the Kramels, and even up to and including like Seyfert and Neroid, and saying like, okay, where does one end and the other begin? And because again, like the Queen of Fodra is an antagonist who is shown to be capable of redemption, asking the question like, okay, given what she is and where she goes wrong, why is she capable of redemption? What does it mean to actually save her and for Sophie to integrate her at the end, versus someone like Mythos who can be neither saved nor integrated, right? So that's the kind of stuff that I'm rolling right now. Okay, so they are here. I just need to explore the area more. Ah, they were hiding. Okay. Okay, Joey. Just jump off from there and show me what you've got. But Kaz, I'm pretty sure I'll die if I jump from here. Oh, come on. You'll be fine. Most likely. Now get with the program. I need me some inspiration. Pow, 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 pow. Hit me in the rear. Make it a good one. Oh, look who's here. Hi, guys. Still up to your old tricks, I see. Fantastic. With you here, I think I can be inspired anew. Joey, Kaz, dinner is ready. Today I tried cooking with a variety of famous spices from this region. Hello, Annie. Well, hello there. Good to see you all again. So, you're still cooking, huh? Of course. Cooking is my one true love. Speaking of which, why don't you join us for dinner? Oh, yeah, we're really, busy. Don't be silly. I found an old kitchen in that house over there, and I've been slaving away all day. And there goes Sophie. Hold it right there. No, don't make me eat her food. Please, Asbel. Sorry, Sophie. It would be rude to say no. Sharia. I'm sorry, Sophie. Help me. Don't worry, my angel. Annie's cooking has gotten much better. Okay, everyone, dig in. It looks delicious. Nice try, Sharia. Alright, stomach, let's do this. Sophie, don't spit it out. Joe, wait. What's going on? My body won't stop shaking. My throat is rejecting it. I can't swallow. Shh, Annie will hear you. I think Kaz is... Something's happening to him. He's gone heavenly. Oh, what a shame. You weren't hungry this time either, huh? No, the fault is ours. We should have told you before. Hey, boys. I know it's yummy, but don't go overeating, okay? He's not waking up this time. Lucky stiff. Don't worry. I'll take him back to his room. Oh, and I almost forgot. I packed lunches for you all, and it's some of my best work, if I say so myself. Pork curry! I got the recipe for Mabo curry while I was doing my background grinding before this stream. A Tales classic, and a classic culinary dish, even more broadly. Alright, so now we go to Liberty. I guess the corollary to that thought that I was having about Little Queen and Fodra Queen also, because I was mulling this earlier today. We were talking about that idea of identity as a union of different individuals and people making sense of themselves as aspects of the others to whom they've related. And I think there's an interesting sense in which part of the lesson of this game, especially in the wake of the fourth act, is while all of these people have their own background contexts and parts of their history that they can't share with each other, like Pottery said a while ago, you don't have to be able to get to know someone 100% in order to make the effort to get to know them at all. And even with their episodes and their history that they can't share, these 6 people, 7 if you count Richard, do constitute this kind of unity, like a single character, if you want to call it that, by virtue of going on this adventure together and doing everything that they do in the world, even as they still remain individuals with all of their diversities of intention. And so I just got thinking about the idea of what are the similarities and differences between the Fodra Queen as this collected consciousness and singular entity, and our JRPG party as something that's kind of similar. Because I feel like that has to be part of the lesson of that final confrontation, this idea that the party is able to show her it's not just that people can change, but it's that people can actually constitute sort of a better version of what the Fodra Queen is, because they, like her, are comprised of all these individuals. We have a bunch of little queens and we have all of these little party members, but they come together to express a whole that is greater than the sum of their parts, and that depends on all of that diversity and the good and the bad of all the emotions that they've been through together, whereas the Fodra Queen feels like in order to have any semblance of natural identity and harmony in the world, she has to erase all differences in her own parts in order to create this kind of forced timelessness, which is why, like, I think if you were to replay that fourth act again, I have to imagine all those little queens in those scenes we saw with just them would come across almost as brainwashed in a really sad way, Like, it's easy to think before you see the Fodra Queen that they're just a bunch of drones with no sense of personality or individual identity. But then when you see that last one, you realize, oh, they're clearly capable of that. They've just had that removed from them, or have reached the conclusion that they need to remove it from themselves in order to have peace in the world. Kind of similar to Nazamil, actually, when we talk about it in that sense. So I feel like that stratum of the final confrontation, if you see it as a conversation between the party and the Fodra Queen in a way that parallels Asbel's conversation with Lambda at the end of the third act, I think is quite interesting to me. Let the JRPG party hold the baby. Heroes can change. Yes, I think we're saying exactly the same thing. That's right, Grail. And I think that's part of, I think, the twist of the fourth act. Like, they don't big it up like some kind of giant plot twist, but I think it wants you to think that all of these little queens are just these sort of mindless clones or monsters in the same way that the monsters you fight in the field are, which, by the way, I keep thinking about those, or Gregoroy, or whatever the name of them was, because the way they were just so naturally tending to the flowers in the field, that was such an arresting image, which I think really points to the idea that even when life seems mindless or something coded as a villain or an enemy or something to be destroyed, there can be much more interiority to it than you realize. So coming to understand, oh, we thought that we were fighting a mindless horde of enemies, we're really fighting something more like a corrupted version of a JRPG party. It's a really interesting and cool twist. And almost in that way, a kind of interesting parallel also to Tales of the Abyss, where for a lot of that game, like I write about in my study of it, you're also sort of chasing like a anti-hero party, or a party of failed heroes who have tried to change the world and are, you know, now desperately trying to find a different way to do it outside the bounds of the narrative of history. So interesting to see that in a much different form as we're confronting this kind of metaphysical entity. Racial differences, yeah. With a little bit of a different bent to it, because like Little Queen, I think, felt like the very possibility of human intention and individual will was something that would corrupt and erase the balance of nature, whereas Nazamil thought, no, I just have to get everyone to think in exactly the same way and then there'll be no conflict, but definitely different flavors of a very similar sort of misguidedness, I would say.
Lately, I've been
A lot of
having
crossover between
weird
those games,
headaches when I wake
as you've been
up.
saying the whole time,
It might
Grail.
be your posture. Are you sleeping in weird positions?
Pascal was talking in her sleep again last night. She's always very loud.
Ooh, what'd I say? What'd I say? Tell me now. I've never met anyone who was so excited about talking in their sleep.
You were casting arts.
In my sleep? Man, I am good.
And the Creus arts actually worked.
Oh my gosh, her arts must be the loud noises I keep hearing in the middle of the night. Amazing.
No, it's not the arts.
Huh? I don't follow.
The noise is me smacking Pascal around to stop her arts.
Oh, I get it. So that's why my head always hurts. Thanks, Sophie.
It's no problem at all.
Wow, I have no idea what the proper etiquette is for this situation.
Oh, that is very cool pottery. Yeah, every time someone gives me a tiny window into, wow, I almost said Tales of Destiny because here we are in Tales of Praxis. Every time someone gives me a window into Destiny lore, it sounds really interesting and right up my alley. So I feel like I should take the plunge and try to get to know it a little bit at some point. That's interesting though. I forget, are you a JoJo fan? Because that also sounds remarkably similar to actually my favorite arc in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. the main villain of that arc has a power which, at least superficially, is very similar to that. Yeah, I think one of my favorite kinds of metaphysically fanciful storytelling is similar to what I talked about in Tales of Fantasia and my article on Scarlet Nexus before that. This idea that things like playing with time and causality and multidimensionality, like it can all seem very confusing and convoluted and like making a fanciful world just for the sake of world building. But when you get a really thoughtful storyteller who maps out those kinds of ways of reorganizing the fundamental nature of the world in a way that tracks metaphorically, you can get some really cool and shockingly crisp insights into just human nature and the struggles of people by expanding those from the struggles of an individual to the entire nature of the world in which they're embedded. That was a big part of what drew me into to Fantasia. Yeah, and I'm not a big anime head either, but every now and then I'll kind of, independently of anime-ness, have one or another recommended to me by a friend. So Dan succeeded in getting me into JoJo, and that's one where, as you say, like it's a hard barrier to entry for me, but some of the arcs in that are just, in terms of stuff we're talking about, chef's kiss. Yeah, one of my favorite conversations I had at PAX actually was, I think it was an armor designer for Destiny came to one of my lectures on the oeuvre of Miyazaki, and he was talking a little bit about the design philosophy behind the team that puts that out. And yeah, it really seems like, especially among games of that kind, they just put really just different tier of thoughtfulness into a lot of their world building, which is really admirable to see. And that alone makes me really interested to check it out and just see the nature of the work. All right, Joey, I want you to use that piano to inspire me like never before. But Kaz, I don't know how to play the piano. You know what I do to guys who say that? Heavenly! Guy tells me they don't know how to play the piano, I beat the shit out of them 100% of the time. Well, hello again. Oh, nice to see you. You know what this reminds me of? It's a tie. It's a tie between the Dark Wings, circa Tales of the Abyss, let's say, and the fake Chosen group in Tales of Symphonia. Nice to see you? Did Joey just go flying off again? Poor Kaz is in a bit of a pickle. His well of inspiration has run dry. What's he trying to get all inspired about anyway? He needs to stop Cocoon from falling on Grand Pulse or something. I think there are Eidolons involved or something. And Chocobos. Kaz is a blacksmith, and Joey is helping him create a new weapon. Is he the blacksmith? Is that how we're finally getting around to this? Oh no, not those guys that are in every game without fail. Who would have expected they would show up? Helping him create a new weapon. You call that helping? Oh, most definitely. Aha, that's it. I see wings on this piano. Joey, come back, Joey! Oh, is that why we're doing all the wings bits? Are these our incarnation of the Dark Wings in Graces? Oh, look. He's inspired again. How wonderful. Are you ready? Yes, sir. Are you set? Yes, sir. Then give me fire! More, I say. Are you fiery, Joe, or aren't you? I'm trying, sir. Wow, this is some serious business. And this is where the concierge comes over and says, Sir, this is a hotel. You can't fashion weapons in our foyer? Yeah. I don't think we're needed here. How about a nice home-cooked meal before you go? Oh, geez, no. Oh, you're full again. What a pity. Oh my god, he's absolutely singed. Yeah, it's finished. Hurrah, sir. This is it. The sword I've always dreamed of making. Isn't that just a regular battle sword? It sure does look like one. Excellent work there. Fine then. Why don't you just take it? Hey, careful with that thing. Come on, you two. We're out of here. Battle sword, hastily forged. Well, are you talking about the end of the Tales of Grace's story or the end of your story, Grail? Or both, I suppose. Oh, I talked to you like 50 hours ago. Isn't that crazy? You spend enough time in a game and even the nothing throwaway lines of NPCs with no plot behind them just get stuck in your head, so they're familiar when you talk to them again. No NPC is a nothing NPC, but that one was a nothing NPC. Alright, do they show up at Warrior's Roost? I'm gonna guess yes, based on this pattern. Maybe not? Oh, but there's a star. Oh, and they're there. Okay, let's start with the star. Oh, they were the star the whole time. Hey, look. It's Kaz, Annie, and Fiery Joe. I don't like this. Just thinking that. Did you discover this area's famous ingredients, Annie? I did, Joey. They use a type of fish called an eel. Then can I get started? Then I can get started? Is a fish an eel? Is that technically how it's classified? Or is an eel a fish, rather, I should say? Please, dear brother, be my guest. How's the heat, Annie? Oh, it's wonderful. Local ingredients make the best food. It's making me miss Japan, dude. My favorite dishes, well, it's a high bar to say my favorite dishes there, but some of my favorites were the eel over there. I'm such a sucker for eel. Right you are, Kaz. Only fresh local ingredients can make a truly special dish. Annie, something smells kind of funny. Is this? You have to cook these fresh ingredients very thoroughly, or you'll pay for it later. Back at the Royal Palace, I almost sent some guests to paradise from food poisoning. Can't make that mistake again. It smells like she's burning wet dog hair. I don't think that's how you cook eel. We have to stop her before we... Oh, this is bad. Joey, you have to stop now. Oh, hey everyone. Nice to see you again. We should be able to eat soon. They were never heard from again. Those three are more trouble than they're worth. I think Annie snuck us a boxed lunch. What exactly are they out to accomplish, I wonder? Let's just be glad we escaped with our lives. Evie doesn't like this side quest either. Sweet and sour eel. Oh, I hate that little icon. It looks exactly like my very last meal in Japan at the airport, which was insane. Many regional variations. Well, I feel like a good way out, or maybe way to another stage there, Grail, is just to, you know, pull a Kurt Vonnegut and, you know, make the story about your endless cycle to rework it, right? There are worse ways to go than that. That's the endless torture of working through writing, though, right? The more you spend time with it, the more you get to know it, and the more you discover it on its own terms, the more you see different ways in which the pieces fit together, which is so magical and so rewarding, but so much fucking work. So, I feel you, my man. Velanik! Yes, okay, so at least it's more of the Berseria symptom of saving it all to the end, just as an artifact of our playstyle. Not like they wanted us to do it all at the end. This is an interesting way to do side quests, though, the idea of just marathoning the full thing all at once. Definitely gives you a different feel than if you were encountering them throughout the game.
It looks like all of the people here are still struggling to keep warm.
Hey, Captain, you should use your Creus arts to make a fire for him.
You want me to build a fire? Well, I guess that would work. But surely you can make a fire yourself, Pascal.
You don't want me. I'm so powerful I'd end up setting the whole place ablaze.
So you're saying that my Creus arts are better suited for this sort of thing?
Captain?
Your powers are just more subdued, Captain. No need to be ashamed.
I can take you on any day of the week, Pascal. Why don't we have a little competition to see who can make the smallest fire?
The smallest? Well, there's no way I can beat you at that, Captain. But all right.
I will begin. Huh.
That's totally tiny. Okay, my turn. Yo.
Huh.
Yeah.
Not bad.
What? You didn't make any flames at all.
Ah, but I did. You just can't match the precise control I have over my arts.
Oh, yeah? Watch this.
The captain really does have a lot of skill.
No comment.
Oh, Malik, my beloved. As I was watching all of our diverse and fun characters interact with each other, I had another fun corollary of what we were talking about in terms of the party of heroes versus the Fodra Queen, just because, Padre, you talking about what I was saying in reference to Dawn of the New World renewed my thinking about kind of the meta-narrative content of the player's role in these games, which you know I am all about with a capital A. But I think through that lens you could also probably mount a pretty interesting study in terms of comparing the Fodra Queen with the player. If you think about our mode of engagement with the game and the way in which we navigate it as the act of engaging with and mediating and directing this party more so than any individual player, any individual character, especially in a game like Tales of Graces, where, like we've been talking about, it gets you to emotionally invest in and study every character on their own terms and then bring those characters along in the party. Our lens through which we see and engage with the world is similarly a kind of aggregate consciousness and mode of engagement, similar to what the Fodra Queen is to all of her little queens. So it might be interesting to ask and wrestle with the question, how are we alike and unlike the Fodra Queen, and how have our constituents in this party put us in a position to make a different and healthier choice than she makes, and how she wants to treat this world that we've spent over 100 hours journeying through, you know? Oh yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's nice to have a fun sideshow as a palate cleanser after the main plot too, Grail, so I'm not complaining about it. Well, you'll have to tell us on Monday how everything wrapped up for you, since you've already essentially breezed through the entire thing. I'm excited to get your full final impressions of it. That's it, Joey. Keep dancing. That's wonderful, Joey. I'll have to make something extra yummy as a reward. I'll never unsee this. You seem to enjoy treating your younger brother like a toy for your own amusement. Oh, Hubert, my man. Do you know what of you speak? Hey, Hubert, come on. Ha! Look at the mouth on you. I'll have you know, Joey here is his own man. Now dance, Joey. Dance for your life. Yes, sir. Bigger, faster, more. Yes, sir. It's heavenly. Jesus Christ. I see wings on Joey's back. You have a new idea. How wonderful. Come on, there's no time to waste. Kaz! Here we go, Joey. Are you ready? Yes, sir. I think there's something wrong with me. I'm seeing double, or triple, or something. I see many fiery Joes as well. You do? Oh, thank goodness. I thought it was me. Let's begin. Right away, sir. Okay, Joeys. Give me some fire. More! More, I say! Are you fiery Joe or aren't you? Roger that, sir. So, why did Kaz become a globe-trotting blacksmith? Because he burns with a desire to be the best artisan in the world. That's a tall order. You know it. Keep it up. Joey! Kaz! Dude, they're totally excited about this. Final stretch. Here we go! Kaz was clinically dead for 5 minutes at the end of that smithing session. Finally, it's the knife of my dreams. You there. Who among you can wield a knife? Do I have to? A knife user, eh? Then I hereby present you with this. Thank you. You did it, Kaz. This brings us one step closer to our dream. We're almost ready to launch Dark Wings. There it is. Ah, they had me. The essence of Dark Wings is so insistent that you can recognize it from miles away before the words are ever uttered. Get ready, world. No one expects the Dark Wings. If the Dark Wings really end up making the ultimate weapon in this game, I'm gonna laugh.
Ah, forsooth! My words have escaped me.
Forsooth, a voiced side scene.
What seems to be the problem? Do you need help?
Perhaps, fair miss. For you see, I'm a playwright.
Yeah, I feel like I just can't take a character seriously when they have such a giant hat, Grail. But it definitely adds character.
The villagers here bear a countenance most dour, and so I thought to stage a play in the hopes of raising good cheer.
That sounds wonderful.
But alas, my words do fail me. For when I strike pen to paper, I find the muse of wit has fled. The disappointment of the villagers will be most palpable, and I cannot bear to face them thus.
Oh yeah, Drag. Well, good luck with that.
Oh, that's awful. Asbel, we have to help him. What should he write about?
Oh, I guess we're gonna help.
I don't really know what he's talking about. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I guess we were missing an item the first time. Well, better late than never, right?
Perhaps you could write about the love between two brothers.
Oh.
Hubert, I never expected to hear something like that from you.
What about the bond between a master and pupil?
My man.
Oh, I'm sorry, Captain. You just sound so serious right now.
Alas, my friends, that will not do. I must have a subject to which all can relate, from the noblest king to the most squalid groundling.
You've got me dead to rights, Grail. I am definitely a theater kid. But I find that the particular sort of tortured avant-garde theater kid that I was resonates more with Zed sitting in the amphitheater in Origin as opposed to a scene like this. But don't get me wrong, I'm loving this too. But yes, it definitely brings back memories of many behind-the-scenes brainstorms in my high school theater days.
I thought my idea was pretty good.
Think back upon the halcyon days of your childhood, fair miss. Was there art which brought you comfort?
Theater.
Well, I used to pretend I was a princess.
Oh, theater was the answer.
A princess?
In a way.
Gadzooks! You have the right of it.
Oh, are they going to put on a play?
But curse the day! I have no sources from which I might draw inspiration.
I suppose we could help you collect some.
A fairer bargain has never been struck, my good lad. I shall inform the innkeeper of my needs at once.
We're drawn to the villains that we need to understand because they represent parts of who we are, Grail. Also, the entire conceit of Zed is that he's all of us, but put that to the side. He is definitely just like me for real. Kygar's script, written long ago. It's kind of interesting, but kind of not. All right. Well, onward with the darkest of the wings. I know that I really did like... I felt taken for a ride by how long the opening was. Like, at least give me a mimic when it takes that long. Oh man, I knew I was getting older as a Tales player because I encountered finally, after probably 15 hours, my first mimic in Tales of Hearts. And instead of being annoyed or surprised or scared, I was overjoyed because my reaction was, oh, I didn't think this game was going to have mimics, and now they're here, and I'm so excited about that. Well, we did find them here. Yeah. Okay, so now's that. Darkwing's going on a world tour.
Alright, that is it.
Huh?
Fendel is short on Cretus, which means I haven't had a hot bath in way too long.
I know, right? It's hard on me, too.
It should be. You smell horrible.
Oh, really? Do I?
What are you doing?
I smell fine for 12 days.
I think I feel sick.
Oh god.
I hate to even ask, Asbel, but what are you doing?
All this talk is making me wonder if I smell too. It doesn't seem that bad, but it's hard to tell. I don't smell that bad, do I?
Let me check.
That does it. I am getting some of the captain's cologne.
Yeah, you might be right, Grail. There is a special kind of macho energy, especially like as you get to know and spend more time with the series and just recognize a bunch of new little details that you didn't before. Oh man, I had a little moment like that when I was rewatching Better Call Saul, because speaking of macho flexing at recognizing things, I have watched Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul more times than I would care to admit, and so I won't. But I noticed like a little detail that I'd never noticed before, and I was like, "Oh, that's so cool," and I feel cool for recognizing that. It's a nice little kind of shot in the arm of something. Oh, hello. Are you visiting Zephyr too? Obviously. Are you here by yourself? Where are your siblings? I don't know. They went out, I guess. Can I ask you something, Fiery Joe? My angel can ask me anything. Why do you like being spanked? Doesn't it hurt? Yeah, it hurts. But it's the best way for Kaz to be inspired. If he knew a better way, I'm sure he'd take it. Just like I know Annie's cooking is terrible. And so does she, honestly. Why would you continue to put up with such pain and humiliation? So we can all be together. If Kaz becomes the best blacksmith in the world, and Annie becomes the best chef, we can stay together. Must they be the best in the world for you to stay together? Well, Technically, I suppose not. But see, we each have a dream. You said something earlier about Darkwings? That's it. It's the name of the shop we want to open. If we do that, we can be together forever. That's actually really nice. So you suffer as you do for the sake of a dream. Well, it's not all suffering. Sometimes it can even be fun in a weird way. It is not easy being a younger brother. Hey, are you a little brother too? That's great. Maybe you can be my mentor. Alright, I gotta go find Kaz and Annie now. See you around. Senior younger brother. This is his 17th year in the business of being a younger brother, so he has a lot of experience. I love that. This is great too, because to no one's surprise, a little half-joke side quest in a Tales game is making me think about bigger thoughts in the broader game. And yeah, no kidding, Pottery. That's putting it mildly, I think, in this kid's case. But yeah, what Fiery Joe was just talking about, it strikes me as an interesting thing to keep in mind as we're working through the post-game too, because we talked a lot about the nature of suffering and multi-generational suffering and continuing those cycles in the base game. And then the fourth act brought up a lot about the idea of dreams and trying to figure out what it is to shape one's identity according to a dream and how to elect to participate in or establish certain lineages based on sharing in a dream. And so that idea of what Fiery Joe of all the characters said, that I suffer for the sake of a dream, strikes me as maybe an interesting way to get some mileage out of connecting those two concepts in the two parts of the game. So I don't have settled thoughts on that yet, but it struck me as a nice little nugget of continuity. It's in the eye of the beholder, I guess. For better or worse. And yes, Grail, to go back to your earlier comment, I think we are almost undoubtedly the problem. I'm going to push it more on you than me, but as you can tell, I definitely have a stripe of that too. People do love to recognize things. I'm going to say the same point for like a third time and then I'll shut up about it, but bringing someone into the game by giving them a sense of agency and validation by recognizing something and then encouraging them to take that recognition a step further by connecting thing they know with its own themes and lessons to new thing they're experiencing, that I think is the magic of how Tales does it. And that's very cool.
Asbel, Pascal is behaving strangely. I'm not surprised.
Okay, rude guy. And with me in total freaking agony over here and everything.
If you don't mind my asking...
Pascal, are you still hanging out with that rude guy? Dump him, girl!
Pascal, what is the matter?
Well, the thing is...
Yes?
I seem to have stopped growing.
I see, and exactly how old are you, Pascal?
I'm 22, so like what should I do, little bro?
Perhaps you should discuss it with the captain. After all, he's quite tall.
Oh, right, and he couldn't be that tall if he wasn't still growing. Aw, thanks, little bro. You're a lifesaver.
Okay, what the... Please refrain from any further comment. I'm starting to get a little worried about you, Hubert.
I will say, I don't think I clocked in our adventures so far that we have such strong views about cameos, and it's got me even more excited to dig into Radiant Mythology when I get to that one. It'll be all the more fun to wrestle with and talk about as a group, I think. But Pascal's like a very specific kind of scientist, right? She kind of relies most on her heritage and intuition rather than like scientific studies, as best I can tell, in her own experiments. That's one thread that I wish they had come back to or closed, but at least so far I don't think they have, unless they do something in the post-game. The idea that Pascal's bloodline, like specifically her bloodline, was something with which the Elith glyphs resonated, so she was able to form pacts with them. Because remember, we learned the Marcians are not a bloodline, they're just a group of engineers from Fodra, but based on what the glyph said, there seems to be something about Pascal, so I kind of wish I knew a little bit more about what that consisted in. How did they even find this place? Is her hat getting bigger in every scene? I haven't been paying attention to that, but that would be really funny. Do they look different to you? Maybe they're going to say it. Huh. Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, maybe they're just talking about how they're not having a good time with each other, though. Well, and to Pottery's credit, that's one of the fun things about having very strong views outside the norm. It can facilitate all the stronger conversations about those concepts. Think of it as a tempering fire, right? Speaking of blacksmith motifs and symbols. Oftentimes, I mean, that's why devil's advocacy is a real thing, right? You don't get the contours of your views or the implications of it and what you really want to be committed to until you're challenged and have to negotiate them like that. Philosophy, friendos. Now that you mention it, something does seem a little wonky. What's wrong, Fiery Joe? Kaz? Annie? Joey? Hold a moment. I think they're fighting. Fine, you're right. My cooking is like eating from the floor of a barn. But still, how could you say that? I'm trying my best, Kaz. I really am. Okay, yeah, I shouldn't have run my mouth off like that. But it's your fault. Why aren't you any better after all this time? Oh, what's the point? We should just quit now. We're not even real siblings. Oh man, we're getting real. Heavenly. Just kidding. Bet I freaked you two out, eh? Come on, let's all sit down to eat and make up. I just got some new Oh no, Kaz, bro, they took you seriously, man. An off-color joke at best. Huh? Where'd they go? Annie just ran off that way. For real? Crap. Dude, what now? Yarr! It's done. Here, take it. I'm not supposed to take gifts from weirdos. Well, tough. I've got business to attend to. I think he went to look for his siblings. Do you think they can patch things up? They'll be fine. Right, Asbel? I'm pretty sure they will be, yeah. Mandarin scarf. Mandarin and orange must be different colors, or mandarins would just be called oranges, right? Damn. That does seem like a very Pascal thing to say. Speaking of Pascal's mode of scientific inquiry. Is that better than what she had? No. But it's nice to have. All the way back to Lant? Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I like Tales games because I feel as though by and large they get away with developing these robust worlds and cultures that have all kinds of wacky and unusual characters that are native to the world, and then they also add in characters like little cameos that provide almost more like windows into almost commentary on the world from an outside vantage point, which is another thing that's pretty cool and valuable about these games, right? Because just like Tales of Berseria is commentary and reinterpretation of Tales of Zestiria, so too I think can those cameos be thought of as a way of just getting a different kind of commentary and insight outside of the world from within it, almost like the exegetical works of esoteric traditions, right? In the way that different like commentators in something like Jewish mysticism would interpret the interpretations of others or explain certain meanings in passages of scripture, stuff like that. I think that's part of what makes the works feel literary and mystical to me in the ways that I've talked about in my publications. Is this the star that we're going to, Grail? So I don't want to preempt us. That's the EX Dungeon Star. Alright, so... But we're still continuing with the Dark Things thing, right? Are they inside the manor? Maybe? Are they hiding? Ah, they're there. Fantastic. Yeah, I get what you mean, Grail. Veigue does seem to be more embedded in the world than a typical cameo. I like it. Yeah, I think for me it makes the difference with cameos just if there's a thematic connection, an explanation as to why they're there, and some kind of journey that requires resolution between them and the characters of the world. So, you know, even if like Sophie and Jade don't have jobs in the way that Veigue does when they end up dropped into the Calyx, I feel like, you know, the path to help figure out why they're there, and learn from them and learn more about the nature of the world from the Calyx, which we really don't get anywhere else in the Desolation and Zisteria until we get to there, which then also, by the way, ties further into the world when the Calyx becomes a much bigger part of Berseria. Like, that to me scratches the same itch, which again, a lot of cameos don't, but I feel like the Tales games are quite good for that. Hey there. Oh, so her hat is definitely bigger every time. That's fucking hilarious. Oh, she's more hat than woman at this point. I see you're all friends again. I'm glad. The scene would be even funnier if she just absolutely immediately fell over with no warning. Oh yes, Kaz searched high and low for us. If I may ask, what are you doing here in Lot? This is where we're going to open Dark Wings. I mean, once stuff settles down. How about it, Asbel? Do they have your permission? What do you mean? Asbel is the lord of this town. Wait, or is it Hubert? I can't keep that straight. Either way. Oh, wow, so you're in charge of everything, huh? Not everything, per se. It's complicated. Well, in that case, we've got something you should see. Joey, Annie, prepare yourselves. But can't we have both? I mean, I see this and I want to see like Annie get into a cooking competition with the Wonder Chef, specifically the Beef Boy Wonder Chef from Tales of Hearts. If we're sketching out our dream scenario here, Joey, Annie, prepare yourselves. The whole hat like wobbled when she turned around. Once you see this, you'll beg for us to set up shop here. There's nothing like the bond shared by siblings. Make me proud, you two. This is Darkwing's very first job. Here we go. Yeah! And a 1, and a 2. Ooh, we're cooking with charcoal now. Here I go. Heavenly. Here you go. One awesome sword, and it's all yours. Oh, that does look heavenly. There's got to be someone in the world who can use it, right? Go find them. My food really will take you to paradise this time. Grail reacquainting himself with his favorite friend, the Automod. It flagged beat your ass as sexual content, which was hilarious, especially in the context of this spanking-laden side quest. I don't know if Twitch even knows what to do with that. It's a legendary dish. Okay. You've accepted it? Good. That means you've officially taken our bribe. Wait, what? Don't worry, we'll keep it on the down low. But in exchange, we'll be using this room as our new HQ. Now wait just 1 minute. Your bribes are certainly not adequate compensation for taking over our home. I get to live in my little brother mentor's house? Hooray! Oh, for the lava. Good to see Hubert likes this plan. I do not like this plan. I'll come see you again, Fiery Joe. Ah, my angel, I eagerly await your return. Requiem. A great sword that chooses its wielder. Seems to be searching for someone in particular. Oh no, is it an unspoken crossover to Tales of Destiny? Mabo curry! Speaking of, a dish containing mabu tofu and curry. The mix of flavors creates the ultimate taste. 10 of them. That's awesome. Oh, is there more to talk about with them? Certainly add a certain spice to their progeny, there's no doubt about that. Look who the cat dragged in. I'm glad to see you all again. Are they still spanking you, Fiery Joe? Hee hee! How did you like the Mabo curry, everyone? Come to think of it, I've never had Mabo curry before. I know that, Joey. That's why I'm making it today. I assume you'll all have some as well? Why not? I like living on the edge. We'd be glad to accept. I like to think that since we can't see the ceiling, they've now developed to a point where they needed to cut a hole in the ceiling of the room for Annie's hat to jut through all the way to the second floor. Hooray! It's delicious. Pretty spicy, though. Oh, it's good. The spice level is just right. It is good, but it's a strange dish once you think about it. I was thinking the same thing. Does it really need the mabu tofu? Oh, here we go. Look, I'm just wondering why this dish exists in the first place. I don't follow you. Curry is curry, you know? It's a complete dish by itself. I just think it's strange to throw mabu tofu in on top of that. Dude, you're thinking about this all wrong. Just pretend you added curry to your mabu tofu. I'm just saying, if you're going to put something in your curry, it should at least go with curry. Like pickled vegetables? You're just a curry purist, my brother. Is Mabo Curry an official member of the curry family, Annie? Or is it an outsider? That's a good question. And a very gracious question. Mabo Curry exists as both Mabu Tofu and curry. That's not very helpful. The recipe originated years ago, before Joey was even born. We were lucky enough to get our hands on some top quality tofu. But later, Annie and I got into a big fight over what to have for dinner. Let me guess, one of you wanted mabu tofu and the other wanted curry? You got it, sister. Eventually, our mother settled the fight by... Wait, did you say mother? Yep, our mother was the first to mix mabu tofu and curry together. So that's where it came from. Yes, in our home at least. Our poor mother died shortly after Joey was born. And in all that time, I've never forgotten the taste of her mabu curry. Well, you know, sometimes it's just an instantaneous thing, Grail, right? The character needs to finish her arc, and then once she's crossed that threshold, everything immediately changes. Other times you need to do an art 1,000 times before it upgrades. But there's no middle ground. It truly was the best thing we've ever tasted. And I always knew I'd make it for Joey someday. Oh, you guys. The Mabo curry you're having now is every bit as good as Mom's. It's home cooking at its finest. It's the taste of family. So this is how Mom's cooking tasted. Did you hear that, Asbel? Yeah, the taste of family. I guess it has a reason to exist after all. Wow. Oh man, this is making me feel like we're back in Tales of Berseria with all of this thematically super-powered food content. This makes us part of the family, Asbel. Eating together makes a family, right? That's right. So let's be sure to eat it together again. Oh my gosh, this stuff is amazing. I could eat it for the rest of my life. We should sell it in some kind of special container so it stays hot. People would love that. That's a great idea. A wonderful idea. Say something else, Joey. I'm starting to see wings sprout from your very words. Will you do the honors, Kaz? Heavenly! And as mysteriously as they appeared, they were gone. That would be a fun campy study to do too, looking at all of the various ways in which we see the Darkwings over the series, because we go from crazy nonsense like that, which ends up tying into the themes of the game in really cool and touching ways, where you get lines like, you know, it's the taste of family, to the Darkwings as sort of fairly relevant supporting characters in Tales of the Abyss, helping Ash along with his schemes to subvert the God Generals and help the party. To I think the very first iteration of the Darkwings. I don't think they're in Tales of Fantasia, but don't quote me on that. But the first that I remember is you run into them all over the world in Tales of Destiny, where they're just basically the equivalent of mercenary hunters trying to like amass more wealth than the party, and trying to learn all of the secret sacred techniques that only Stan can learn. So you find them at all of the places where you can learn special abilities for Stan, and they're trying to figure out how to do it themselves. Yeah, I'm thinking, looking at the time, it seems good to wrap up this sword quest with Veigue, and then we can dive into some EX dungeon shenanigans on Monday. Although we do also have those horrifying floor tile things. And maybe some other stuff beyond who's to say. Well, you're to say. Or I could look it up, but I like following along with you. Okay, so it's a request, right? Should be able to just turn it in here. Here you go, Veigue. You really found it. Thank you. If you could also fulfill my companion's requests, it would be a great help. Your companions? Who are your companions, Veigue? Yeah, no, I'm certainly okay with not going through the dungeon twice. So is there stuff with Veigue's companions, or is that the terminus of the quest line? That was definitely not the adventure I was expecting for a Friday night stream, but for a Friday stream, digesting and working through the main story, I feel like that's just what the doctor ordered in a funny sort of way. We have the master class now. Not sure what that is either. Alright, well, for now, tag up on that save, and we can make a game plan for Monday on the other side of things. Oh, got it. Alright, so that's the end of our time with Veigue, at least. Well, he was characteristically vague, but I want to know more about his companions. Who knows? Maybe we'll have occasion to run into them in one of those things that Grail mentioned. Alright, my dear friends. Well, as with all Tales adventures, especially in the late game adventures, you never know what you're going to get, and between all of the heartwarming concluding scenes of the main story and the hilarious otherworldly scenes of the Darkwings, we certainly had the full range of different tones on display in the last couple of streams, but it was a pleasure easing out of the main story and into these side adventures with you. Like I said, especially in this Tales entry, it's so nice just to be able to spend some extra time with these characters and get to know them that little bit better, and to revisit moments in the past that are only made all the better now with the context that we have in the future, both in the metafictional sense of going back in time like we talked about, and in the hilarious skip-based sense of revisiting Hubert and bullying him about that time he wet his pants. But everyone does that, don't you know? Audrey, pleasure seeing you, my friend. Yeah, great chatting, as always. See you Monday. We'll see if we can get you turned around even a little bit on that cameo stuff before all is said and done here. All right. I'm sure Radiant Mythology will give me plenty of arrows in my quiver for that, at least. Yes, definitely low-key, but a different one. There you go. it looks like from Grail's estimation, and I imagine this must be right, especially going by benchmarks like the Heavenly Step, we ought to have at least 2 streams in us for the EX dungeon and various odds and ends. So my guess is, well, who knows? I don't want to be premature. Maybe we'll be able to plan an Exilia kickoff for a week from Monday just to have a clean start. But we'll feel things out as we see how things are wrapping up in Tales of Graces. We are, of course, in no rush. And I'm so glad that as we were working through this hilarious cameo-laden adventure in the post-game with characters from other games and characteristic, what's the word, archetypes from other games, like the Darkwings, we were also able to revisit and dig further into the ending of the main story. Thank you for bringing that up again, Grail. As you alluded to and as we talked about, there is definitely a lot to continue unpacking in terms of the various points of connection between the different conflicts of the story, and also just what exactly the nature of that final villain is. What's she all about? What is the relationship between the Fodra Queen and all the little queens? Even just that nomenclature, we haven't talked that much about that yet, but here's something to just put a pin in, and maybe we can go back to it on the other side of the weekend. Consider the fact that for all intents and purposes, the main story in the base game was a struggle against a king, Richard, who had been corrupted by Lambda. And in the supplemental Act 4, we're instead fighting against a queen who in some ways is similar to Richard and Lambda, in some ways is deeply different, as we've been talking about. So is there something regal worth considering about her character too, beyond simply her being the cosmic essence of a planet and the intentions of perhaps not the world, but at least a world? So we continue to think a little bit more about that. Ask yourself over the weekend, as a gamer who has my JRPG party, how am I alike and unlike that Fodra Queen who is, I guess, allegedly the sexiest character in all of Tales? That can be your fun meditation homework over the weekend, and we can revisit that on Monday. Well, and Grail, I will put this to you because I oftentimes think this about myself in deeply true ways. As you are someone who games in the way that we do, sitting down and working through a game can help you think about and discover new aspects of your writing, even if you're not actively sitting down and writing. I, for one, am excited to look into your writing this weekend too, so hopefully we'll be able to chat about that on the other side as well. All right, my dear friends. Well, I'll make one more plug at the end of the stream, and I'll put it in the VODs, which I'll get uploaded this weekend too. Big new full-length study all about the origin of the Tales series and a new way with which to investigate and read some of the core titles in the series. So if you're a fan of unsung heroes, characters left out of their own stories, or just new ways to think about your favorite games, check that out. I'd love to talk with you about it. We'll be back same time on Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, cheers, Grail. You have a great one too. And all you others out there, whether you're lurking, watching the VOD, it's been a pleasure. So excited to continue on into February with this journey through the study and celebration of Bamco's Tales series with you. Until next time, friends, I'm Aaron Suduko, the founder of With the Terrible Fate. This has been Tales of Praxis. I hope you think well. I hope you game well. I hope you find a way to be good to yourself and perhaps a little artistic, whatever that looks like for you this weekend. I'll see you on the other side. Cheers.